Getting another Chad Kroger voice in.
No, we haven't used that one in a while.
Been some time. Yeah, I was thinking for a long time, I really kind of had a distaste for Nickelback, and I always kind of like hated Nickelback. I was like, fuck Nickelback and fuck Chad Kroger, whatever. But the more I think about it, I mean, I actually got this weird kind of like respect for Nickelback. I don't know, like I'm never gonna buy one of their albums. I don't listen to their music. I don't enjoy their music, but I got this weird respect for them for being kind of like one of the most hated bands in the world right now, but still kind of finding a way to make a fuck ton of money.
Well, it's that band where it's like they're like people really hate them, but then there's a bunch of people that really like them, so they still make a ton of money. And probably the more hate they get, almost the more money they get. It's that sort of thing. It's just like it's the best publicity you can get.
And plus, it's one of those things like I bet, like I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked at any interviews or with him or anything, but I bet if you hung out with Chad Kroger, he's probably the coolest guy in the world. I'm sure he's probably chill as fuck.
Yeah, that's what he seems like. I've seen some of the interviews, or there was like, I think there was a video in Argentina when some people were like flipping out, and he like, I can't remember. Like, it's been so long since I watched it, but like he does something where like he stops on stage, like, "Yo, you guys here to have a party, or are you guys just gonna like fuck around and like hurt people or whatnot?" So I think somebody like chucks something at
That's
him. That's
not the Nickelback way.
Yeah, he doesn't do like an Axl Rose where he's like he just sits down, like, "Okay, guys, he's like Slash, Duff, rest of you, go take a fucking break. I gotta sit down and talk to this audience here. What the fuck is wrong with you people?"
He doesn't.
Have you ever seen one of those ones where he like sits down like he's a fucking teacher, like on his desk, like, "Tommy,
I'll quiet down. Yeah, I've seen that.
Tommy,
Yeah, I mean,
you threw a water bottle on stage. Now, is that allowed to throw a water bottle with the cap still on, filled with water on stage? Is that what we do around here?"
oh, you did it again. You did it again. I can't work in
See,
these conditions.
all these good people are here to hear to some Guns and fucking Roses. So, Tommy, let me ask you once again. Do you want to have a fucking good time? Do you want to have a fucking good time? Well, guess what? We're not playing anymore. Fuck you guys. We're out of here.
That's where Axl
Slash
gets
is like,
up.
these guys paid a lot of money. They got 4 fucking songs. Good for them. They can blame it all on Tommy.
They get up. They have like a sheet. It just has like it's almost written like almost in crayon, like a bunch of names on the board. He just puts a black dot on Tommy's name. Like, see what happens, Tommy. See what happens. Guy's like, my name's not even fucking Tommy. He was just calling me Tommy.
Yeah, you just, I don't want to be called Tommy. I got so excited I threw a water bottle. It's not my fault. Yeah, well, guess what? Guns N' Roses isn't playing anymore for you. In fact, you're banned from it.
Just look out for this guy. No, but I bet, like, I mean, I think I heard it was on, like, what was it? I think it was on Game Grumps, like, Danny was all talking about, like, I feel really bad because I always thrashed on Nickelback, and I actually went to this thing the other night, and I actually met Chad Kroger, and he is one of the nicest people I've ever met. And I don't know if he was almost doing it just out of pretending to be nice because he knew how much shit I talked about on Game Grumps, or if he was just genuinely nice. So he says I was always kind of like, I was kind of afraid someone was going to bring something up, but luckily nothing happened.
Very conflicted. Well, I think it's that thing where everybody just wants to hate without knowing.
But once you actually see, oh, there's a person beneath that, then it's just like, oh, I can't really, Because I think you almost just view, I mean, I'm not trying, this is like, obvious, but I mean, I think we all just kind of view celebrities more as characters than actual people. Like, oh, they live inside the box, They inside
this, yeah.
It's sort of like, box that gives me entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. They provide me and me alone entertainment. That's how I view it. You get those people.
Yeah, you do get those folks. But I guess I'm hoping you're recording by this point.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Ryan Dunigan.
And we'll see you some other now.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. We just had to get at least one in this week. Just call it a short one.
But, well, I finally beat Fallout 4.
I haven't beat it. I've been kind of like taking my time.
Now, this doesn't mean that I, beat every little mission in there, but like one section of the story, I kind of finished.
You beat like the main plot line of the game?
Well, the only thing about this game, it's one of those ones where I think it goes like 3 or 4 different directions, which when a game is that big, that's kind of sometimes an annoying thing. They got the thing where like they're like, okay, you got these factions here. Now you got to pick a side now. And when you kind of do the thing, you're like, you know what? Can't we all be friends? They're like, fuck that. Fuck that answer. You know what? I want you to go out there and kill those other people. Shoot them in their fucking head. Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, nobody's really, been mean to me over there. No, no, no. What, you're not part of this side? No, I don't know. Just mean, like, keep my options open. No, we're not getting past this conversation. It's either yes or no. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess. Why even have other options to click if it's not going to work?
What are the, all right, so you got the Minutemen. What are the other teams?
You got the Minutemen, but the Minutemen are kind of like, I'm not too sure exactly how they work.
They seem kind of like just outside the clubhouse, kind of like...
Exactly. Because like the Minutemen are my favorite ones of the ball because they're the only ones that aren't like so like pushy, like, hey, you gotta be, it's us with them. You know what I mean?
Then
like,
again, they don't got a goddamn choice. They're kind of like, hey, stranger, you just want to help us out? We're all kind of pretty fucking hapless without you. It's just like, they're all these experienced, trained soldiers. You have like, oh, this guy who joined us like a week ago, he's our new leader.
I know. Well, it's like the slog is that place with all like the ghouls. Those guys can't take fucking care of themselves whatsoever. There's so many goddamn missions where they're like, oh, we lost somebody else. Or could you get rid of the raiders? Could you get rid of the mutants? Like, God, how many more turns do you guys need? It's like, I can't figure it out. Like every single time, it's like every other mission. It's like they need something.
Mm-hmm.
So like the Minutemen, I was like, I don't know how many missions there are. I've done like almost 50 missions for the Minutemen, and it's kind of just the same thing over and over and over again. And I always just kind of wonder, like, is there a point when it just ends?
But is there a point where they actually get like a team that goes with you? And I remember just several times I went over that mission where you have to get the cat. We have to go in and bust in the castle, kill the Mirelurk, and then I remember just so many of my guys just getting brutally murdered. They're just kind of like, we're just going to charge in there. Like, okay, we go in there. Then all of a sudden I just hear, oh, God! You know? Like around a corner, just like this one poor lady just swarmed by all these things. Corpse still there, hasn't been moved.
Well, that's like when it got later in the game and like they were trying to make me choose sides. It'd be like, but then all of a sudden there's like, you got like the Sims fighting the Brotherhood, and you're like, I guess I'll just stand here because I don't want to cause a problem. So you're just standing there and there's lasers and gunfire going around you.
I figured like I did a mission with like, I'm behind the game. I keep on getting sidetracked or I keep on going like, oh, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is that? You know?
Mm-hmm.
What's this? What's that? You know, it's like a fucking like Nightmare Before Christmas song or something.
Yeah.
No, but that's the thing with that game. You'll head to one direction, you'll come across something, or you'll just stumble into like a weird part. Like, oh, what? You turn around, oh fuck, death clock, dead. Yeah, I got to get back on that game. I've just been trying to get some other stuff done lately. But so all right, you got the synths, you got the Brotherhood. Who else do you got?
And then you got the Railroad. That's the one I know about the least amount. I went there for like one mission.
Haven't met them yet.
They're kind of and the thing about the game, and this kind of reminds me like almost as New Vegas had that kind of feel too.
Yeah.
Where I don't feel like I know any of these people well enough to like know who really is like supposed to be the ones to trust. Because in a sense, this is kind of how it breaks down. It's like you got the Brotherhood, who are like the Republicans, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You got the Sims. They just remind me like when I see them because they all live underground and they got this nice futuristic and like we're trying to preserve the world and all this stuff, you know, or like our own section of the world. We don't want to deal with the outside. The outside is our enemy, and it just reminds me. All I think of is
fucking nerds.
Well, it's pretty much that because it's a bunch of scientists, but it reminds me of like the Don Johnson movie, A Boy and His Dog, when he eventually gets pulled into the underground, which is like identical to how it is in this game, except for like, I'm just like, when are they going to hook me up to like a machine that's just going to jack me off? Like, he's got the perfect material to create humans.
That's a mini game. You just have to like press X really fast.
But that's where like all the big story stuff seems to happen was down in there. So I'm not going to say any more to that. So you got those, and then you got the Railroad, who are supposed to be, once again, I don't know very many people on. They're all like kind of like dickwads to me, so I'm like, fuck you guys, I'm leaving. Even though I was only there like once.
They sound like bad guys, the Railroad, just by the name.
Well, what they're doing is they're taking in rogue synths that kind of left the institution. Because like the institution's always going out to grab the synths and pull them back. And that's the one part I'm like, is it good? Like, you know, you find this one synth who's leading a raider gang. It's like, well, he's clearly bad. So you take him back in. But then there's like some other synths that are just like, we're just trying to, be free. And then you're like, oh, so. And when they go back there, it's like all the synths that are like in the underground, they're all kind of like, hello, sir, how would you like your coffee? So they all just seem like slaves.
So
I
you
think
got
what
so
the
you got-
railroad's doing is they're like free in synths, but they were just kind of like such like dickwads. They're like,
Oh,
fuck
Underground
you.
Railroad. I guess.
Yeah, so that's what it's
I didn't
supposed
put
to
that
be like.
together.
But I felt kind of bad because there was one mission, like, it was kind of like, I made multiple saves so I could go back and, go on the Brotherhood path or go on the other one if I feel like that at some point.
I was thinking like the railroad company because like in all Western movies the railroad was
The
always
Railroad's always the super Republican company.
yeah. So I assumed that, but I guess Underground Railroad that would make more sense if they were the good guys. But okay, so you got the synths, you got the Brotherhood, you got the railroad, and you got the institution.
Well, the institution is the synths.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if they're like a rogue synth or something. What was the fourth?
And they give you the biggest curveball when you get to the institution, like so that because when I kind of explain it, you kind of go like, well, you know what, fuck the institution. But with the big curveball that comes in there, then you're kind of like, well, okay, it's conflicting.
Is one of those things like if you stop the institution, every synth in the world dies, kind of thing.
No, nothing like. Well, I don't know because I'm kind of because it was up to the Brotherhood. Brotherhood's like, we're gonna go in, we're gonna napalm all the super mutants, raiders, robots, anybody who's of colored. It's just like
anybody more tan than me.
Yeah, exactly. But there was a point though where it's just like kind of like with the institution when I was just kind of going down that path. They're like, and this is what I said. I'm like, the second that they tell me that like you got to go in and kill the Minutemen, I'll be like, fuck you. I don't even care. About like this, it's like I'm not killing the Minutemen. That's my people.
You actually got emotionally attached to this stuff.
Oh,
You're like,
I did.
Those are my boys. I mean, they're stupid
was.
as fuck. They can't do anything themselves. But I ain't killing the Minutemen.
It's got like once you get that institution, there is some like close to tearjerker moments almost. But like, because there's a part when I had to go to the railroad. He's like, the guy's like, you got to go in there. You got to kill them. It's the only way to protect our way. They're just going to become a constant threat because they look at them like terrorists, I guess. Mm-hmm. So you go in there and you stand there and they're like, hey, what are you doing? And you're like, just kind of came to visit. And because like the one thing about Fallout, like other games, if you were playing Grand Theft Auto and like go over there and kill Big Tony, you're like, well, he gave me my first gun, but okay. This one, you kind of go in there like, you almost pause for a moment, and everybody's kind of standing there looking at you and like, they're nice guys. Why can't we all get along? But I guess just to get experience, going to Vad's point, the main leader's head and just blow it off, and you're like, okay, I guess this is how it's going to go. And then later on, you had to fight like all the Brotherhood guys, and you felt kind of bad. You're like,
so who'd you end up going
with?
There's
Paladin Dan. He was,
So you didn't
he
go
was
with
my
the
good buddy
Brotherhood?
for a bit.
Who'd you go with if you didn't go with the Brotherhood?
I did the Institute one.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
I thought the Institute wanted to kill the Minutemen, or did the Brotherhood want to kill the Minutemen?
No, mostly it was more like the Minutemen were more like on the like they're kind of like just like the odd
Hanging
ones out. There was one mission where like they went to get a synth and there was a couple Brotherhoods that were like, yo, or the Minutemen showed up and they're like, hey, we're here to like help this guy out. And then I try to like convince them like, no, man, we can all get along. And they're like, fuck you, we're going in, and you can just stand there if you want. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll stand there. And then they were just like raped instantly by like the
Minutemen.
Yeah, it was kind of sad. But so I was just like, oh, okay. But it does give you that thing. Like sometimes that just kind of bothers me. It's like, I wish there was like why isn't there like a peaceful like way? Can't you do that? It's like, no, you must kill.
I think it's
you
those...
make a decision who you're with. It's like almost like some like grade school thing. It's either you're with us or you're against us. And no matter what, if you break that trust, you can never be friends until maybe like the 11th grade.
Yeah, there was almost that kind of like it's almost kind of like what Bush said. He's like, either with us or you're against us. Good old Americans, I think before in video games, when they try and give you that whole open-ended thing, they try and do the thing, do you want to be good or do you want to be bad? But now they try to do that thing where it's kind of like, no one is good or no one is bad. It's what you believe, kind of thing. Like, in instance, like the end of that. I was playing that game. Not as good as Fallout 4, but I was playing that game. Life is Strange, and nearly every choice in that game. And occasionally you do get what's blatantly the wrong answer, what's blatantly the right answer. But most of the time, though, every choice you make is something kind of like, well, this will help out this person, but it's probably going to piss off that person. Or even if it does help out the right person, if you piss off the wrong person, that might come back later in the line to bite you in the ass. Where in the very end of the game, it's giving you one of those like choices, kind of like one of those really like tough choices where there is no real happy ending, you know?
Oh, okay. So yeah, you're kind of like forced to go in that path.
Kinda. Well, I mean, short and simple of it. Spoilers. Um, you have visions of this tornado coming in, and every once in a while you have like flash. You have this dream where you're like, this tornado's coming towards your town, and you realize that you doing all this time traveling has fucked with time itself. So you have to make a choice. Basically, there's a point where in the game, very beginning of the game, you found out you can control time by stopping your best friend from dying. And in that process, you and her uncover this mystery about this other person who died, about her friend who died, and all this and that, and you guys kind of rebonded and all that. So you find out though that basically if you let her die right there, everything would have got uncovered. Although like it would have let it cause a chain reaction for everything to uncover. So the choice is let the town get destroyed and keep it the way, just keep going forward, or to stop, go back in time and stop yourself from ever using time travel, which would result in her dying, but result in the police finding out everything through a chain reaction of other information you wouldn't have known previously.
Almost like a Flashpoint thing.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Huh. Well, that's kind of an interesting one there. But yeah, well, the thing it's like, okay, like in Fallout 3, the upside of that game is you could pretty much do every single mission. There was like the good or bad thing, and maybe that like affected maybe like 2 missions, but you technically complete them. You just complete them maybe in a different way. Where this one, I feel like if there's, there's like this main arc, and then it kind of branches out in different trees. So if you go towards, the institution, at some point it's going to be like, nope, can't do the railroad, and nope, can't do any more of the Brotherhood stuff. And I think probably it'd go vice versa, because if you went towards the Brotherhood, you wouldn't be able to do that. And if it went towards the railroad, and then the Minutemen ones, they just seem to be like, well, nobody out there can fucking take care of themselves, so why don't you go do it? You're a single guy. I mean,
like you got a lot going on. Your kid's missing. You don't have that no more.
Kid's missing. Wife's dead. I mean, you got a couple different buddies with you. Why don't you go do something about it? And to me, I just always consider the Minutemen ones. They're just kind of like they're like training. You go out there just to go get that experience, and that's about it. And then come back.
The Minutemen
go get some more supplies so you can build more guns and stuff. But I just kept on I keep playing them. It's like, okay, they got to end at some point. It's like, no, they just keep going.
The Minutemen are just kind of like, we'll just be here waiting, not like we have a fucking choice.
We're afraid. I even got to the point where I felt like, am I playing the same goddamn missions over and over again? Because I kept going to the same places. Is it pulling a Metal Gear Solid thing on me where it's like, wait a second, I've been here, I've done this, why am I doing it again?
It's just experience.
Yeah, I mean, at least you can experience, like unlike Metal Gear where you're not getting experience. But
no, there was well, I'm gonna have to finish that game up. I will say that's kind of cool in some ways. I mean, I can see how it'd be kind of annoying, but other ways I can see it's kind of cool that you branches off in different ways. Because one thing about like when you go and play a game like this, it would give you the and this, I'm not trying to sound like like conspiracy man, but it would kind of give you the illusion of more freedom than what you had. Because, for instance, in Fallout 3, which is a fantastic game still, but you play a Fallout 3 and you get to that point where, okay, you can you can work for the Enclave, or you can work for the like, what was your 2 options? You can go to the you got captured by the Enclave at some point. Then you go to Malcolm McDowell, robot president, and he's all like, he says, okay, so here's the thing, just take this and then go back to them and pretend like you're among them. So basically the mission is exactly the same. You just have the choice of putting the thing in there and destroying the world, or of just not doing that. So either way, it doesn't really change the last mission of the game. First, I was like, if I work for this guy, do I get to come in like on a helicopter or some shit? I'm fighting on his side and going the opposite direction. That'd be kind of interesting. No, you're not. You're just doing the same fucking thing. So
when you're with the Brotherhood, you get to be on a helicopter.
Yeah, you do for a minute. Oh, in this game?
No, and that's when you get to be. Yeah, in Fallout 4, like there's a bunch of missions where you're on like the helicopter flying around, just shooting shit.
I don't think that happens at any point in 3. Maybe it did, but I don't think it does.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen. I know for a fact it didn't happen in 3. That's like one of those games like, I've covered every road in that one. But,
there's some points in that game where I'm almost afraid to go into certain areas just because like I know I'm just going to get fucking destroyed. I'll come across something I didn't even know was there. It's like, I was walking through, like, the first time I went through, like, Boston, there's, like, just oh, look, a little pond. And I just walk in. This fucking, like, ogre thing comes out with, like, a boat strapped to the side of its hand. It's like, I'm like, what the fuck, you know?
It's
You know what
funny
I'm
'cause,
talking
like,
about?
now, yeah, I do. You mean when you're in Maryland?
Yeah, it's like, I think it's Swan. No, it's in definitely 4, I'm thinking of.
Well, it's like the only about Fallout 4, like now I've been at the point for like the last while where like nothing's really too much of a challenge. The closest thing I got was like towards the Brotherhood, like when they first sent me in there, they're like, "Oh, we'll just warp you in there first, and clear out some guys, and then we'll send some more guys to help you." So they warp me. I'm like in the dead center, and there's just everybody's like, "There he is! Shoot at that fuck!" So like everybody turns and shoots. I'm like, "Holy crap! My health's going down so fast." I mean, I got like 150 stim packs, so I just start shooting up. But like it was just like I ran to the edge of like the airport. I'm like, "Okay, I'll just wait for them to come to me." Like, why the hell did they warp me like in the dead center of all that?
I just get the image of your character just just jamming just needles into his chest, like roaring, like, ah! Eyes bulging.
But other than that, though, it's like everything now is just like, up, Deathclaw, boom, he's dead. Up, giant mutant, boom, he's dead. It's just like at that point where you just like walk the wasteland, like killing things left and right. Like, I don't give a fuck.
There's a time I care, but that time has passed.
It's funny, I saw this came out, I bought it, but I haven't played it yet. They had, they put Final Fantasy VII on the PS4, and what I think it is, there was a version that came out on PC like a year, maybe 2 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer ago than that, where it was sort of like an enhanced version of Final Fantasy VII. And, they upped like the graphics where they look kind of sharper and everything, kind of like what they did with Rare Replay and stuff like that. So it looks really good, because I just looked at this, I flipped through the screenshots, I'm like, yeah, I'll download it just for that. That's cool enough. But I remember reading about it, and they have like these kind of weird features in the game. Like a cool one is you can save anywhere, which is awesome. And then I just thought it's like, well, since it's on PS4, this is almost another reason like why not to play it on the old system. Is you can just, you can do the DS thing where you just close it out and then come back right to where you left off at. Because a lot of those old RPGs, you get to points where it's like, okay, yeah, but you don't find one for like an hour. There's like periods like that. So that's kind of cool. But I remember they put this weird feature in there that was like you could literally click a button and like level up.
That's really weird.
Yeah, and
it's like take away the challenge of the game.
Yeah, it's like literally take away the challenge. But I put some more thought into it. I'm like, now if it's the first time anybody plays that game, that they should not even have that on there. Like that would just be like ruining the experience. But I kind of thought, I'm like, if I went back and played the game, and I've already beat that game like 5+ times, I've done everything in there. There's not a single thing I haven't done. I beat all the weapons. I've gotten all, the gold chocobos, everything like that, all the hidden stuff, all the side quests. I thought about it, I'm like, for some parts of that game when like you got to sit there and just level up for like a day or two, since I've already done it, it's not like I feel like I'm cheating. Like I could almost just do that just to like, use it as like just to like play the game almost like in a speed run mode. Not like use it like sparingly, but just enough that like you're like, okay, instead of like, spend 4 hours sitting out here in the forest training, click, 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 click. Okay, let's just go to the next story mode.
Not gonna. Sorry, go ahead.
And I'm just saying, for like somebody who's played it that many times, I don't think that would be so bad if you just kind of want to go back and like, I want to play Final Fantasy VII. I don't have all the time like I used to put in 50 hours into the game or so. So I could beat it in 20 hours or so, and still get like, my pretty much remembrance of everything, romanticize over it.
Well, I will say that Final Fantasy, for me, it's one of those things where I've had respect for it. I've never really got into Final Fantasy, but nearly all of my friends liked Final Fantasy, so I knew about it, and I knew the characters. I know most of the major plot points of the games, probably from 7 onward, or at least from 7 to 10. But 7 was one of the only ones I actually went out and bought later when I got a PlayStation 2, and I was playing it and I was enjoying it for a while up until, like I said this several times on the podcast before, my house got robbed. That was one of the things that got robbed. I was like, fuck it, not going back.
Yeah, not going back now.
So that game right there, I remember enjoying it, but I kind of know most of the major plot points of the story, and I will say that game does stand out. So, not trying to be a bandwagon fan or nothing, but I probably will get the remake when it comes out. And they're probably
Did you see the trailer for the gameplay on the remake, though?
I did. Yeah, I did. It looks kind of like the new age Final Fantasy stuff,
Yeah,
which,
like I looked at it,
I
I'm
knew that
like,
was coming, but
I mean, I knew that. Yeah, so did I. It's one of those things like you almost just like deny it in your mind. And I looked at it, and I'm like, it just doesn't look like much fun. Because I've played some of those games before, and I could just never get into them. And there were games that got really high reviews, and I just look and I go, there was that one. It was Last Story, and I was looking real forward to it because it was made by the guy who made Final Fantasy 1 through 9.
but
It looked
you
kind of
did,
like Final Fantasy 8. Like the characters seemed kind of cool. I played that. I literally bought like the special edition version of it, even though I don't think it cost any extra. I bought that game and I put about a couple hours into it, and I just went, nah. And I put it on eBay and sold it for about the same price I paid for it, and I was just like, it just, it just wasn't for me. I
was it
was
the
just like,
whole run around kind
yeah,
of
it
thing?
was just the runaround part it was just no fun. I just could not get into it. There's kind of like there's that Xenoblade Chronicles that always gets really high reviews, and it just came out for Wii U, and that's kind of like the first Wii U game to come out in like since Super Mario Maker. So I kind of felt like when you're in the Wii U club, you feel kind of obligated to get like those like games that come out, you know. It's
Especially when
also
they're like Nintendo, when they're a Nintendo actual like brand game.
yeah, it's like well, it's like almost Nintendo. It's kind of like Nintendo sponsored game, I guess.
I thought
You
that
know,
was because like the main character from that game
he's in
is is in Smash Brothers, so I assumed that was Nintendo first party.
no, it's not Nintendo for because the original games came out on PlayStation of
Xeno.
that
Wait,
series.
I'm thinking no Xenoblade. I'm thinking there's a Xeno something, and then there's
Yeah,
something else.
you're thinking of the right one because it's the same one. It's in Smash Brothers.
Really? Okay, because there is
But I
one.
think, but now it's I don't know. Now they're kind of like I guess sort of exclusives for Nintendo, but it's not like because the Xenogears ones or
There's
whatever.
Xenogear and there's Xenoblade. Are they the same thing?
Yeah, they're the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think the same thing, but just different. Like they changed over time. But it is sort of that thing where I don't know. I look at it and I just look at that gameplay, and it's like Fantasy Star Online. I tried that one too. It's like I've tried a lot of those games out, and it's just I got bored after about 2 hours. It just I could not get into them.
Was
I
that
don't
the
know what
same
it
thing
is.
though? Was
Same
it
with
was it
I tried Monster Hunter before, and I just couldn't get into that.
Xeno, whatever the fuck it's called? Wasn't is that now that is the same franchise? I don't remember the game, but this is one of those games my friends played. There's the girl with brown. It was kind of anime-ish. There's a girl with brown hair and glasses. They drove robots, and then there was also like a blue-haired android girl that was. I remember seeing a lot of the like a
For
promo art
PlayStation 1.
for PlayStation 2.
Okay.
Was
Yeah,
this
that's like the second because I think there's Xenogear, which I think is the PlayStation 1 games. And I remember those always being really cool and something I always wanted to play. And those ones are turn-based, so if I was going to go play any of them, I'd probably go to those.
and weren't those in the sec? Wasn't one for PlayStation 2 turn-based? I thought they
I
were
think those were called Xenoblade or
Saga
yeah,
or some bullshit.
Xenosaga. Yeah, I think that's it. So, there's that one that came out for Wii U, and it looks cool. You look at like the pictures of it, it's like that looks sweet. But then whenever I see the gameplay, it's just like I just know I'm not gonna really enjoy it. And it's like the Final Fantasy VII one. I feel like I should get it just to see what it's all about. But I just have this thing that I mean that'd be the one that I'd maybe get through just for the fact that it's Final Fantasy VII. Where these other ones I don't have enough ties to them that it's easy for me to kind of play a couple hours and go, yep, been there, done that, seen this.
Well, I will
Okay.
say that something about Final Fantasy VII, and a lot of people like shut the fuck up. That's not coming from a real fan. That's true. It's not coming from a real fan. Is
But it's
something
coming from an observer.
yeah. Well, something about a lot of anime, a lot of JRPGs. There are those that I look back on with fond memories and think were pretty fun, like Suikoden and all that. But I remember playing Suikoden 1 and 2 and loving it. Number 3, I didn't finish, but I liked what I played of it. And, I was kind of like picky with some of them. But like a lot of JRPGs, though, I mean, a lot of them, even though I like anime, a lot of them have that too much of that teenage kind of like young boy with a destiny kind of anime type shit. Even though Final Fantasy VII had that, going off of the
But they were older
trailer.
in Final Fantasy VII. It wasn't like
But it still had a little bit of that. It still definitely had a little bit of that kind of like, I'm just lost. And you just need like faith in yourself, Cloud, like that kind of shit. But I will say, though, the trailer even though I'm sure it will still be there to some extent, which I expect to be, and that's fine. The trailer looks like it's trying to be more like a live action movie, and I think that's kind of interesting. And I've just because in the tone and vibe, it looks less animation. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if they I mean, I'm trying to think back here. Like the other ones still, like for instance, what's the new one where they all look like they're in a BMW commercial, like an emo
Final Fantasy
BMW?
15.
That one, like they all still have this very kind of like, I guess
BMW.
well, they're driving a BMW.
I know what you mean, but like I never thought of it like that, but it makes total sense.
You know, it looks like they're all dressed like they're in a Japanese
Hey.
pop band. They all look too clean shaven. It's like the thing is, I mean, I know it's fantasy, it's in the fucking title, but
Well,
a
I
lot
think
of
that's
times
what made the older Final Fantasy games kind of like 7 and stuff, is the characters looked a little bit more rugged. Well, at least they did,
yeah,
like back in
gritty.
the PlayStation era. They looked more rugged. They looked more like warriors. Where it was about Final Fantasy 10. Now I'm gonna say it was always there a little bit, but 10 was where they started to look kind of get the pretty boy image, and then it just like expanded till it kind of went to like almost too far.
Well, now that they all look like, I mean, I haven't played any of them since 10, but they all looked like they all looked in like the brand new one coming out. I'm not sure, maybe it's already out and it just slid by me. But the BMW emo one.
No, that one's not out yet.
Okay, they all look like like I said, they all look like they're part of a Japanese pop band. None of them look like they throw a fucking punch. Like they got personal trainers, but they never thrown a fucking punch. And
Mhm.
I just can't take them seriously, and they all look like they're fitting into that very stereotypical kind of like anime dynamic. You know, okay, this is the buffer guy. This is the more serious, taller guy with glasses. This is like the wild guy. He's the main character. You can tell he's the wild loose cannon because his hair is a little bit more shaggy, but he's kind of like in the between the others. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and you know the game might be cool. Who knows? But I just can't like where like the Final Fantasy VII trailer. Even though I know it's going to have some anime vibe to it, which is fine. It looks like okay, Barrett actually looks like okay, he could actually punch someone. He actually looks like a badass.
Mhm.
Cloud, still, you know, blonde hair, pretty boy, whatever, but he actually looks like he has a little bit of grit to him. And plus the environment. I always liked Midgar. I always liked the world Final Fantasy VII took place in. Semi post apocalyptic, semi kind of futuristic at the same time. So
Yeah.
I think of a lot of the worlds, the different Final Fantasy games, the ones I know of at least, number 7 always had some cool stuff. So I am curious about the new game, and I may even get it. I don't know if I'll spend $60 on it, but I may even get it because like the new play style, like the play style doesn't really do it for me, but it's not enough to kill the game because I think one thing about a lot of RPGs is you gotta like the story. If you don't like the story, then you're just grinding.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely true too. So, and that's what I mean is like with the Final Fantasy VII remake, I got the attachment because it's Final Fantasy VII. So I think that would allow me to play it and actually kind of enjoy it. But I just look at that gameplay and I just go, it just looks so boring. And it's like when you're gonna play a game where you're gonna do a lot of like killing and grinding and like, because that strange enough, RPGs are the most action-packed games there is. Now, some people be like, "What? That makes it like no, because you battle so often in an RPG, more than almost even a first-person shooter. Because a first-person shooter, you'll end that in about 10 hours. Where an RPG, you'll be fighting for 50 hours or so.
I was just thinking, killing and grinding sounds like a great metal band.
I know. So, and it's just when I look at the battle system, and that I think that's the thing that always ruined all those games for me. It's when you're just gonna do it over and over and over again. I don't know. Maybe if they played more like Devil May Cry, even though that just still seems kind of weird to me too. I think that'd be better
I'd
if they
like
just
that.
did a
I mean, I
full-on
know.
action game. But I think that's the problem though. Is all the ones I've played, you play them and they just feel like it looks. When you look at it, you're like, okay, third person, action, running, and then when they start attacking, you're like, what the fuck is this? It's like it just feels like you got like some kind of like half-assed indie game or something going on, and they've always felt like that. Even like when, as I said, like Phantasy Star Online, that's kind of one of the first ones I can kind of think of. Technically, you have EverQuest and stuff like that beforehand, because that's really what they're just copying is like the online ones. But it's that thing where it's just like I don't know if it was a smooth playing like Ninja Gaiden, then that might work. But it's still that feels like a spin-off game because now we're in a completely different genre. It's
Well,
like I just wish they would do a traditional RPG with sweet graphics.
Ironically, I think one of them, even though the graphics are good enough, they're not sweet graphics, they're good enough. I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think one of the closest things we have to like I guess a big turn-based game is Fallout 4. Not
Yeah, well,
entirely. I mean,
and that's
you
kind
can
of weird because
still
like it's funny because like I saw it like on an award thing. It's like best, one of the best RPGs, and it was one of the nominations. I'm like, the weird thing is like, it's an RPG. It's more like a game. Is like it does. I don't really consider it like a first and foremost RPG. It might feel like it's just got RPG elements to it, but it is kind of true. Like I think the VAT system though makes me feel like a turn-based game. Like almost if even if like Fallout 4 was a better first-person shooter, like it didn't have the VATs in it, I don't know. I might not be into it nearly as much. I think like by having that, it's like kind of like the closest thing you can get to a turn-based RPG on a modern system.
if it didn't have the VAT system, I could not beat 3. Number 3 was there's no way I could have got through that game. Because when I was first playing the game, it's like, how the fuck am I supposed? I'm just having so much trouble because keep in mind, I'm just bad at games. I am. I'm not gonna lie. But no, but once I'm like, oh, that's how he works. The VAT system works way better. Okay.
Yeah, because it's funny just when you watch people who've never really played Fallout before, and you're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? They're just like shooting, like it's a first-person shooter. I'm like, dude, fucking hit L1. Come on. It's like you're bothering me. Like it's like when you kind of watch somebody and they're really bad at video games, and you're just like, and it's almost just like frustrating to watch. Like kind of like when you watch like a child play sometimes. You're like, just give me the fucking controller.
I think we have the same friend in mind. I'm not going to say his name, but there is like
yeah. There is somebody that you gotta almost be playing your own game. You cannot sit there and watch him play.
you can't like. I mean, I'm bad at video games, but this is like I almost feel like I'm backseat driving. Like I remember I had that game. What was it? It was Ultimate Spider-Man for PlayStation 2, and I remember it was very simple. It was just like it was basically the tutorial part of the game where you're swinging around and you're like, okay, here's how you swing, here's how you slingshot, here's how you do all this stuff. Just swing through the rings, race Human Torch, whatever. And I remember watching my friend just get kind of like stuck on a building and not being able to jump around or swing around or just kind of like slingshotting to the wrong spot. Like, no, don't just. It's like it's hurting me watching you. This is physically hurting me, And I like give me the fucking controller. Just give me the fucking controller.
Give me the controller, or I gotta play. We gotta play something where I don't have to watch you.
If it was my nephew or something, I understand. But he was the same age as us, and he played video games. I was like, no, bad. Almost want to get like a spray bottle here for dogs, like spray them away from the controller.
No, yeah, exactly. There is that sort of thing, but I don't know, that Final Fantasy one. Like, I'll probably get it. I'll probably get it day one. It's supposed to like I feel like I can complain because I'm paying. But it is just one of those ones. And I know that here's the thing. It's like Square's just like looking like, we're not making a fucking game for you, you old fuck. Like, and it's just kind of like, oh, that hurts my feelings. That's coming from a 55-year-old man in Japan. It's like, yeah, well, you're an old fuck, and our target audience is 10 through 20, which is pretty much true. Like, when it comes down to an RPG, I do not think the target audience, they don't give a fuck about somebody who's over 20 years old. They're like, yeah, they may pick up the game, but that's not who we're aiming at. We're aiming at kids that got a lot of fucking free time.
Well,
because think about it,
point.
like when we were kids and we had a lot of free time, we played a bunch of Final Fantasy like 6, 7, 8, and all those games.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's a pretty good point right there, because when you think back on that, I think it's also like they're not really even aiming at Americans anymore. So maybe this is an attempt to kind of bring in more Americans. But I think that something like Final Fantasy VII, that is kind of like their crown jewel. So they'd be like, all right, well, here's a game that a lot of people probably view too dated to go back and play. So what if we just took all like the charm of it and just put it into like a new format? And I think that's the whole thing of what they're doing here. I think they're just trying to say, all right, so kids want to play it, but then people who grew up on the game will want to go back and play it, even if they hate it. Fuck them, they're still going to pay it.
Yeah, well, because I think it's one of those ones. They're doing the thing where they're like, we're going to combine an old story with new gameplay, and sometimes for some games that's a great thing. But I just feel like, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be identical, but if it was just turn-based, like that would just make it so much more fun. I just know it's not going to be like an amazing game just because of that. I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy, but I tried too many of those games and I never was ever like satisfied. I always just felt like,
well, you liked Crisis Core, even though you weren't big on the gameplay. You liked Crisis Core.
Well, I think it's Crisis Core because it was like a 10-hour long like PSP game. Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, the thing about Crisis Core though is like that one kind of like you let it slide a bit on that game. Because, yeah, once again, it was kind of like a short. It was a prequel, It was on a handheld system. There was just a lot of things kind of like that you kind of let go. Because really, like the battle system in Crisis Core, not that grand. If it was just a regular turn-based RPG, it'd be 10 times more amazing. But so that's a perfect example of like it is still Final Fantasy VII. So you kind of would maybe go through it because, you know.
I think that a lot of handhelds, I mean, because only handheld that's doing good right now is like, well, aside from like people downloading apps, is is the DS. And I think that I don't know what it's kind of hard to narrow it down but like I think one reason PSP has so much trouble is it's like you're playing something that's not really PlayStation 4 or even PlayStation 3 quality. You're playing this thing, oh yeah, it's fun. There's some good games on it here and there, but it doesn't really have that level of quality. It's more of like, oh, here's a smaller, simpler version of Jak and Daxter or a smaller, simpler version of God of War, where even though like I'm trying to figure I mean Nintendo has some of that. I mean, I think for a while you would just take the simplicity, but it was that weird middle ground where it's like, okay, it's simplistic, yet there's enough weird kind of charm to it to kind of bring people to it. But now it's like almost the fact that it's kind of updated so well is it's still like it's not good enough to stand up to to a to like a PS3 or a PS4 game, but it doesn't have that like it doesn't have that handheld charm. Do you get what I'm saying? And I'm not sure.
Well, the
I'm not sure I'm
problem
doing
with
a good
the
job of
reason why
explaining
the
this.
Vita kind of failed though is because the system was pretty much identical to the PS3. So a lot of companies went, well, if we're gonna make a Vita game, why don't we just make a PS3 game?
Mm-hmm.
And that made a lot of them kind of go away from it. Because the PSP, like the first one, like that actually had a lot of good games, but they were all like gem games because they had like no press. They just kind of came out. You didn't even know about them. Like video game magazines probably didn't even talk about them.
Well, wasn't it one of those things? I remember it was one of those things where because it was like the PlayStation 1 where they hackers found a way you could like copy games and all that, and you could mod it. So a lot of programmers were like, well, fuck it. If people are just going to mod this thing and not even buy our games, why are we going to make games for it? That kind of thing.
I don't think that had too much to do with it because the thing is the people that do that, it's like, yeah, the information's out there, but 90% of people don't know how to do that. It's one of those ones, if you think about it. And mostly when people are modding it, they're not putting like PSP games on there. They're putting like Super Nintendo games, something that's not going to make any money anyways.
Yeah, but I heard like something like copy, like you could easily copy the games, kind of like how you can copy PlayStation 1 games and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if that's true. That's what I heard. But I want to say this real quick regarding the PSP versus DS. I remember, and this isn't like, you can't expect people to totally read the future, but it kind of makes me happy because every once in a while, because a lot of times like video game critics can be very snobby and very kind of like fool themselves. And I remember it was this period like that PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox era. There is so much hate coming on Nintendo for whatever. I mean, Nintendo, they're always a little behind in some way, but they were a lot of hate coming down on them. And people were talking. I remember like when they introduced the DS and the PSP at the E3, the preceding year, they were all like, man, that PSP, it looks so cool. It's so smooth and sexy, man. I can't wait to get a fucking PSP, man. Like, oh, the DS, so big and bulky. Why do you need two screens? Like, I mean, Nintendo's got some good stuff, but I really don't see this thing going anywhere. Yeah, man. Yeah, like they had like a group table. They had like a round table discussion for the big
Everybody
article.
was bagging on the DS.
Everybody was talking so much shit on the DS, and granted, DS didn't have any good games. They didn't have any. Well, had one or two good games, but they didn't have any good games for like a good 4-month process for 3 or 4 months. But then it started actually coming out with good games that weren't just like tests for it or anything like that. But there was this like whole big like year-long period. Like, don't worry, man, PSP is gonna come around, and I have a PSP, and it had some good games. Like, it could do this, could do that, but it's just now like, yeah, but I mean. Now look at it, just kind of shows like, sometimes the experts don't always know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, that's the reason why I think that both the DS and the 3DS did really well. Is they're okay. The PSP's when you look at it, it looks like the superior system. It's got the better graphics. It's got a good control scheme. It can do all these other features. You can watch movies. You can go on the internet. I mean, you can go on the internet and the other ones too. But it had all this stuff going for it. But when Nintendo's doing it, it's like well, the PSP is always trying to be like right behind, like the PSP was pretty much right behind the PS2. So they're trying to make like PS2 games, but handheld, just a little bit pulled back, and where the PSP Vita was pretty much trying to be right there with the PS3. Where Nintendo's one, it's such a far step back that people aren't even focused on trying to like compete with like what's out. They're like, hey, you know what? Let's take the DS and we'll make kind of like let's make some really enhanced like Super Nintendo like games. And they
That's
did a bunch of
actually
those, and I think that's what made it really cool because it's like, okay, I got my Wii where I can play like a 3D Zelda, but they'll make this really sweet 2D Zelda on the DS, or like the Castlevania games. They did so well on there because it's like, hey, remember Symphony of the Night and you really like that? Well, let's just make a bunch of sweet ones like that.
You just actually summed it up better than I did, because earlier you just kind of like that was a very elegant way of putting it, because I was trying to think of the proper way to say it, and I think you just nailed it on the head. That PSP was always trying to be like identical, like always trying to be like right behind, like let's make the closest thing we can to like a PS2 game, like you said, and then because of that, people think, well, I already have a PS2, so why would I want to play a handheld version when I got one that's a little better right here? And I think that right there is exactly that was exactly what I was trying to say earlier, and how like you said, like they'll have like almost kind of ports or like really high res versions of old games on a DS, or even if it isn't like a new game, even if it's not an old game, it's like a new game. There's still some kind of like retro charm to it because that's what Nintendo's good at.
Yeah, well, because it's kind of like on the DS, like Castlevania is a perfect example. That was like the place, like where you gonna like people want 2D sweet Castlevania games. Well, that was the place to put them. And then with the double screen, it made it even better because your map was always there. Mm-hmm. And then like the 3DS, what made that system kind of cool, it was just like a super enhanced Nintendo 64. So not only you got Star Fox and you got the Zelda and you got all those ones, which I wish they'd release even more 64 games on there. And then, they had them on the DS too, because you could get Diddy Kong and you could get Mario 64 and so on. But then you started getting other games that kind of almost felt like sort of like a 64 light game, just kind of enhanced, and it just kind of reminds you of an older era. And Nintendo's always been kind of good at that. Like Game Boy Advance, you look at that, that was almost a time where it was almost like you got brand new Super Nintendo games all of a sudden. You got Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero, you got the Zelda, the Minish Cap, and all these other games that were kind of like, oh, sweet, we're going kind of backwards, but like it's a cool thing, which I guess nowadays you can say you get that on like PS4 and Xbox and Wii U with games like Shovel Knight and all those other games where they kind of go into an older realm.
But yeah,
no, but I think that was the downfall of the PSP, is that by being too close, it's kind of like the N-Gage, the totally forgotten system.
The fucking N-Gage.
Because the N-Gage to me, like what it looked like, was sort of like a portable PlayStation 1. Because that's sort of what the game. I mean, you had there's like a Tomb Raider game for it. They did have a Sonic the Hedgehog game, and I always wanted to play it. In fact, I kind of almost want to go out and buy an N-Gage just so I can play that Sonic game.
I bet it's like probably another like side scroller, like a Sonic Advanced or something like that.
Well, nowadays somebody's probably got an emulator for an N-Gage. I don't know why I don't have one of those. I got an emulator for like every other old system. But
I just forgot about N-Gage. So you brought it up. I remember now you mentioned it. They had like a Splinter Cell game for it, and
because the Splinter Cell was really big then, and that was the first hand. I was before PSP. I want to say it was the first one to have 3D. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It was only like a year before PSP, and I think what happened is that came out, and then PSP came out and it was like way better than N-Gage, so it kind of just dipped away.
People loved PSP for like the first month, like, oh yeah, you can do all this shit, and that was cool. But I mean, no, time moved on, and we saw what's not trying to be like a DS fanboy, kind of like fuck you, Sony, because I got a PS4 right here in my house. But I mean, you get what I'm saying, though. It's one of those things. I just kind of like it. One of my favorite things, as shitty as it may sound, is when you got like so many people hating on this one thing. And then when that one thing comes out, it just kind of like makes everyone shut the fuck up. Like, okay, we were wrong. It's kind of like it happened. People didn't like the second one that much, but it was kind of like when J.J. Abrams' Star Trek was coming out. I remember so many people like just losing it, just kind of like, oh my, Kirk and Spock didn't go to the academy to get what's going on, just so much fucking hatred and anger. And then the movie came out like, oh, okay, well, all right, it was actually pretty good, not the original, but it's good. And same thing with, what was it? There was like another one, like there's so many movies. I remember like I'm trying to think. There's like another one that everyone was looking to hate on, and then it came out. I mean, you can find a whole bunch of examples.
There's all sorts of stuff like that. Well, it's kind of funny because you still see, like, of course, there's tons of hate still of video game systems nowadays, which is kind of funny because the hate's like such a different one. Where before it was like, there was a legitimate like choice of these games, like, and I look at the Xbox, PS2, and GameCube era, is that was a period where there was a big diversity, because you got your Xbox One where you had a lot of your PC games that kind of poured in there. It had a lot of mature titles. You had your Halo. That's where Dead or Alive went. You got like half the Sega lot was on there, and then PlayStation was still kind of doing the Japanese thing. You had Devil May Cry. You got some kind of new Resident Evils on it. Well, before they went to Nintendo. You got all your RPGs in a sense still. And then Nintendo was pulling off not only their own games, of course, but then they did get things in like, we're like, well, hey, we got Resident Evil here. Here's the kind of exclusive. And we got all these other games in this mixed match where there was this kind of battle, which nowadays it's kind of like, it's like, okay, well, what do you like more, Uncharted or Halo? Because that's going to be what your choice is for buying a system. There's not like, other than that, though, it's not like, I mean, yeah, you could say spec-wise it's a little bit different and, format and look, but in general, it's not like you're missing out, like, if you get one or the other. There'll be a couple games you can't get, but other than that, though...
I know you got the big three, but right now, I don't know if I really could get all three of them. I can maybe get the Wii U, but I don't think I can get a Xbox One as well, just because... For how much money that cost me to get games for that, I don't really know if I would have the time to make up for that,
Yeah, I just got it just because it was just like, oh, fuck, it's on sale. Hell yeah, I'll get it because I won't. And maybe it's like because Gears of War that will sell it for me for anything.
I know you're just chanting USA while you got it too.
Exactly, it's just America.
USA, but it's funny because USA, like at the Walmart line.
It's funny because you'll see things like I always see it on like Twitter where somebody's like you like retweet for PS4 or favorite for Xbox, and then like there's no Wii U in there, so I always go okay, comment for Wii U, and then you always like I feel like just the guy in the interview gets all pissy like and doesn't say anything, but it's like yeah, don't fucking forget about the other one there.
People talk about that as if there is no other, as if Wii U's. I mean, granted, like it's one of those things where I guess. In some way, Nintendo really isn't in the race. They're doing their own thing. There was a time where they were in the race, and I'm not saying this to bring them down. They're not in the race. They just have their own demographic now, really. And it's like...
Yeah, it's like they're all video games, but it's not like, well, which one of your friends playing Call of Duty on, where that's kind of almost how it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I think that's fine for a while. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, the Wii U was kind of weak in some ways. I mean, I did like some of the bit better games they did have for it, but in comparison, it was like, why is it so fucking weak in comparison? But now it's just like, all right, well, they're just getting ready to do their own thing. And, the Wii U, that was another example. It's maybe not pulling in the same amount of money the first Wii brought in, but it still is doing, like, it's kind of surprised people and came out with a lot more games as it went along.
Well, it's just that one thing I just love about the Wii U. It's like, okay, yeah, it might not be like a PS4 or an Xbox One, but whenever I play a game on it, it's like, dude, I've never seen Link look this good. Never seen Mario look this good. I've never seen Mario Kart or any of this other stuff. Or Splatoon is a perfect example of another sweet game. And yeah, there's probably about, I got about maybe 10 or so Wii U games. There's not a copious amount. But the games they have are all really sweet. And I feel like this, the Wii U games that are kind of out, you'll probably be playing those 3 years from now, more likely than playing any Xbox One or PS4 game.
It seems like this day and age, video games are far more disposable now. And maybe it's just because we were kids. When we were kids, we would just be like, here's a game. It's probably going to be one of two games.
This is going to last you from your birthday till Christmas.
Exactly. So maybe that's why, but it seems now, maybe it's because we're older, we can just go get a game whenever we want by this point. But it seemed when we were younger, it was made to kind of go back and play. Where now... You can still do that with a lot of modern games, but now it just seems kind of like, all right, it goes on the ottoman, to go an episode back where you just got this big stack of games. All right, beat that, done with it, moving on.
I was going to say, the reason why I think this is the big difference, though, is games back in the early 90s, the thing is they only took like a half an hour to an hour to beat most of those games. So you could play them a bunch of times over. But a lot of these games nowadays with like a 20, 30-plus hour time frame on it, it's like, even 15 hours sometimes. It's like, yeah, like when are you going to get time to do that again?
Well, I even mean like probably N64 and PlayStation 1 era. I even mean those games. Like, I still think that like you could probably, I mean, maybe it'd be a little hard to go back now. I mean, I'm thinking back. I'm looking at some of my games right now. Some of them do have this replayability to go back and check them out. But I feel like since games come out so much more, I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't really know all the details of how, but it seems like every other month there's a new Assassin's Creed coming out. And I get the sense that you're not really almost made to go back and replay Assassin's Creed. Like, oh, the new one's going out, just chuck the other one out the window now.
Yeah, literally, like, because they
Same
made
thing with
the games,
Call of Duty,
they make the games almost not really worth anything. So I think almost the value depreciates. Where once again, Nintendo's always kind of done it right, where it's like and they've had their kind of faults, but generally it's like you get your main Zelda maybe twice per console.
Mm-hmm.
You get your main Mario twice, maybe sometimes only once. Same with Metroid and all the other ones, and sometimes you don't even get them at all on a one. Mm-hmm. So by doing that, though, I think that almost makes the games feel like they're worth more, they got more replayability, and so on, where I will say this, in 20 years, who the hell is going to go back and play a lot of those Assassin's Creed games? And I love Assassin's Creed, but I'm already overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed after number 2, and like, oh, let's like sequels.
Like, I'm sure they're good games, but it's just one of those things where it's like, when they come out so much, it's like, it's hard to kind of like, well, I feel if I go into this one, I'll be missing something,
I get that feeling too, even though I know like you could probably just jump in and get like, because that new one that came out a couple months ago, I heard nothing but good things. It seemed like they got it really polished. It looked cool. I saw some scenes where a guy was on top of a train. I was like, what the fuck? Because I guess I was just so used to it being like 400 years ago. So I was like, what the hell are they doing on top of a train?
Yeah.
So it looked kind of cool. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. It's like, I wouldn't mind picking up one maybe at some point again and jumping back into it. But it's that thing the games almost don't feel like they have that value or that worth. But this is how I kind of look at it. You know what's going to happen is, you play your games right now. When you get to that, like, when gamers like us get to our retirement stage, I feel like that would be the
stage.
Well, I feel like that's the point. Once you're in like your retirement home, that's when you go, okay, it's time to dust off all those PlayStation and Super Nintendo games.
I thought you meant like retirement, like I'm taking a break from the games, no more. I thought you meant like something like that.
Oh, no. I mean, like when you're literally going to like retire in life and you just kind of decide to like kick back, that'd be the time I feel for like all of us. It's like, let's finally just bust it out like we're 12 years old again and just go through them, just marathon play it. Like I could just see a lot of that again. It's like I'm retired. I'm getting my pension. Here we go. It's like I don't got anything better to fucking do it. I'm gonna go through all Final Fantasies once again. You know what I mean?
I know what you meant, but you say bust it out like you're 12 years old again, like a fucking kid. Like what comes to mind is that line in Departed where he says,
"Okay, we're gonna watch Ghost in the Shell, so get ready to bust it out."
Yeah,
just.
Or it's like there's that line in Departed, like, what was it? Like, he says, like, you rise quickly. Yeah, like a 12-year-old's dick. That line comes to
mind. Well, watching Tifa in Final Fantasy VII.
I'll actually say this going back to Final Fantasy VII for a minute. I know I sent you the first episode, and the first episode it's okay. It's okay. There's the guys who do Dragon Ball Z Abridged are doing this Final Fantasy VII Abridged. It's called Final Fantasy VII Meccan Abridged. There's just type in Final Fantasy VII Abridged or Final Fantasy Team 4-Star will pop up. But the first one, it's okay. It's not that great, but trust me when I tell you this. Number 2, it's better, but then 3 on, they're all pretty funny. They're on number 8 right now. I'm gonna recommend you actually check that out. It's like kind of like it's like Dragon Ball Z Abridged. What they do is they take footage from the game. And they're taking gameplay footage, but then they dub it and they actually make the mouths move. Every once in a while, if there's a joke that applies to something else, they'll have an actual animated segment that cuts away real quick. Or what if they have the menu screen, like when you see the character's profile picture, they'll be actually be animated, kind of talking to each other during the profile picture, kind of thing. So I'm actually going to recommend checking it out because it is pretty damn funny as it goes on. Like Tifa is like a condescending bitch to everybody. Cloud's kind of a pussy. Barrett's basically the same thing, just big, loud, and angry. And they finally got to Red 13, and he's just kind of like I'm trying to think of a way to explain it. He has kind of like he almost kind of has like a Canadian accent, but he's kind of like a big dopey dog. Like he's just always happy about everything.
Huh. Yeah, maybe at some point I'll have to check it out. Those ones always just seem so. It's kind of like I like the Dragon Ball Z Abridged ones, but they just always seem so long that it's like watching a regular show. There's a lot to catch up on there.
Each episode's probably like 4 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, it sounds weird. It just always seems
Coming
like a
from
lot.
people who make like 20-minute
I know.
movies and post them on YouTube.
Yeah, I feel bad because I'm the one making similar stuff. Well, I guess this is different though. It's like our stuff's like I'm not trying to put stuff in bad things, but it's like ours is like full on created, where this is just using other people's material and making jokes out of it. Not putting somebody down, but sometimes I kind of look at those kind of things. I'm like, it's like it's got funny moments in it here, but I could just play Final Fantasy VII myself.
It's one of those things though. It is legitimate. The writing is actually pretty quick-witted. It is pretty funny, and I'm gonna recommend. I mean, I'm Final Fantasy VII. It's not my favorite thing. I like it, but I mean, like I said, I never finished it, but I liked what I played of it, and I like the characters in the world. And I'd say check it out, give it a chance. Like, 'cause the first episode was okay, but from there on in,
because I saw that first one, I'm like, there's a couple funny moments, but it just kind of seemed like, oh, okay, black stereotype. For some reason, they're making Cloud seem like a pussy, even though he's like a total badass in the game. Okay.
He actually has some like more funnier, quick-witted moments as it goes along. So, but just if you could chug through the first episode, it all gets better as it goes on.
Huh. Well, let's take a quick break.
Hey, I'm Rob.
And I'm Slim.
And we do things like eat hot dog smoothies and have our interns shit in adult diapers.
Yakov Spiridov loves us. He raves about us on Twitter.
We do a lot of great interviews with musicians, actors, and comedians.
We've also gotten a bunch of death threats and lawsuit threats.
If any of these things intrigue you, then check us out. Find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube.
Rob and Slim, internet radio at its finest. Pew 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 pew.
Okay, and we're back.
So, I know we both talked about this over the phone briefly, but did you see the trailer to the new Ninja Turtles movie?
I did, and it looks fucking amazing. It just looks like they answered like what everybody wanted. Because people there was something that was like, what do you want to see in the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie? People are like, you know what would be cool? Bebop and Rocksteady. Always wanted to see that. Well, what else? Casey fucking Jones. So by putting those two things together and saying like, hey, there you go. I think that's already really cool. And here's the thing. Casey Jones, it's played by Stephen Amell. And that's totally amazing. If it was anybody else, though, and I would have been like, what? They didn't give him long hair, I would have been pissed. But for him, it's like, nah, it works. Whatever, that's fine. It's Stephen Amell. I like him so much that it's like, I don't care. Now, if it was Stephen Amell with long hair, because we all know what he looks like with long hair, we've seen Arrow. I wish that was the case, but whatever. I think he'll do a sweet job as that.
You probably couldn't cut it.
That's one of my favorite Ninja Turtles characters anyways, too.
He probably couldn't cut it because they're in the middle of filming Arrow, I bet.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It probably has something to do with Arrow, because right now in Arrow Season 4, he doesn't have long hair whatsoever. Not in the old scenes or the new stuff.
I will say that like the thing about the first reboot Ninja Turtle movie.
And I enjoyed the first one, actually.
I know. I wasn't even kind of like...
Fucking Spencer knows, no matter what he sees. There could be a pile of shit on screen, and he's like, it
had a good texture. The lighting was really good. It reflected off the shit really nicely.
It was shot well. That's all I have to say. I'm not saying like the movie was good. I'm just saying like it had good cinematography.
Yeah, The sound design, fantastic. Let me tell you that much about that pile of shit. Amazing sound design. You almost
felt like you could smell it and breathe it all at the same time.
I will say the first one, because I've watched it again since the theaters on Netflix. And it was a little better second time around. It's one of those things where, here's the thing about the reboot. It wasn't like it was god-awful, and I didn't even think it was god-awful when I saw it. It was more like, I guess it just felt, God fucking damn it, someone puts me in a goddamn group text message and you don't want to be part of it. It just keeps fucking going off. All right, sorry about that. Anyway, so the reboot, the whole thing with that is, it kind of just, it didn't really, it felt like more of the same. And granted, you just want to see more Turtles fighting, more action. But it was just kind of like, okay, so we got to reintroduce the Turtles meeting April for the first time. And then who are they fighting against? Shredder, of course. And then the Foot Clan, the whole thing, the Foot Clan weren't even ninjas in that one. They were just kind of like, a bunch of terrorists. They're almost like they're trying to be like the League of Assassins from Batman Begins or Dark Knight Rises. So, where actually in Batman Begins they still had swords and all that, but for like in Dark Knight Rises by that point they had guns. Like, oh yeah, swords don't work, guns do. But still, for the aesthetic of the movie, I would have liked to see him fight with like swords and all that. But whatever.
Yeah, because they're fucking ninjas.
So And it wasn't like a god awful movie. I didn't even think it was a bad movie. It was just okay. It was just kind of like, to me, it just felt more like it didn't really even try that hard. Like I'll say the whole scene with the snow, with the whole part where they're going down the truck in the snow. That part was pretty awesome. And as well as like there's a fight between Splinter and Shredder. That part was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I mean, I enjoyed it. It just didn't blow me away. I was looking forward to a sequel because all right, because maybe then we'll see some stuff we haven't seen yet, and I'm kind of surprised it took the sixth movie for them to come out with
Bebop.
Bebop and Rocksteady, because that was like I almost got this weird because I heard they're going to be in it. Then I actually, because I didn't really keep my ear to the ground on this movie. I just overheard they're going to be in it. I'm like, okay. And then I saw the trailer. I'm like, that dude has a mohawk. That guy's in like leather. Then I see, like Tyler Perry flipping a few switches. And all of a sudden you see Bebop and Rocksteady. I'm just like, oh shit. I did get this sudden like childhood like flashbacks. I know of the characters, but even in this like big internet age we live in, I still haven't seen those guys in a long time.
Well, the thing too is I just like how they look just the way you remember them. They did not try to modernize them. They did not try to. They just said, "Fuck it, let's just do it." You know what I mean? And I think that right there is that's smart. Just do it the way that people want to see it, and you can get both. Like, because that last one, it was sort of like you had to go into it going, "This is not my childhood Ninja Turtles. This is not made for me. This is made for a kid, who was born in 2000, or not even that. The kid who was born in 2005." Mm-hmm. Like, that's who the target audience sort of was for that last Ninja Turtles one. So, and like, I actually enjoyed it. Was it as good as the first two? Oh, no, not that good. Was it better than 3? Yeah, better than 3. Was it as good as 4? Definitely not as good as 4. But I still enjoyed it. I had a good time. I was more impressed than I thought I was going to be. Maybe that's sort of it, too, is because you kind of went into it and like, it'll probably be good. And then I'm like, it was a little bit better than I thought I was going to be. So sometimes that leaves a bigger impact. But this one right here, this looks like this might be like a really fantastic one. Might even be up there with 1, 2, and 4.
Well, I'll say this, like, even though I probably have more fonder memories of 2, 4 I think is probably the best one, because I think that was the best one to accomplish the whole thing of, it still doesn't take itself too seriously. It knows it's a movie about turtles that do kung fu and ninjutsu, but at the same time, though, there were moments where it stopped and took itself seriously for a minute and actually had some more I don't want to sound cheesy here, it's going to sound like I'm quoting like a Fast and Furious movie, but it had some family moments, So,
It did. No, that fourth one is like, I consider that one of the best CG movies. I think that movie's got, the CG is better than any Pixar movie. Now somebody will be like, whoa, because everybody loves their Pixar movies so much. But like, I don't know, the CG in it's so good. Like, the thing I like about it is it treats that Ninja Turtle stuff so seriously. I love how it's still a sequel to the other ones
still
before
a comedy in some way, yeah.
It's still got comedy, and then it's like it doesn't have to base itself off Shredder. It's like they say, hey, we can change up the villains and everything like that.
That they brought Qatar in it, but she wasn't like she put Catan in it, but she wasn't like the main character or main villain.
Yeah, like no, there was all around a really sweet film. Like way more impressed, and that movie does. I feel like that one almost doesn't get enough credit for how good it is.
Mm-hmm. And I think, go ahead.
I think maybe because it's whenever something's like, unless it's Pixar, for some reason everything else that's CG seems to kind of get put on the wayside, or animated for that matter, and maybe that had something to do with it. But no, overall, that one's such a fantastic film.
I think that one is a combination of things, because when it came out, because that movie didn't make a lot of money. When it came out, they had the 2D Ninja Turtle, like the next gen 2D Ninja Turtle show, but I don't think that had as big of a splash as the current 3D one on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, whatever it's on.
Yeah, that new one for some reason
it's huge.
And I've heard adults say that like, no, this show's really fucking good. Because I watched like I watched like a quarter of an episode on there once, and I was like, I don't know, it's okay. It's like, the original show, it's more like I just have such fond memories of it. Mm-hmm. It's not like the most perfect show because it does have it has like the 80s problem of shows where it's kind of like the same show over and over and over again,
Splinter gets something from Dimension X.
Well, it's just like the first 4 seasons, they're like always battling Shredder. It's they don't have enough change in it. Where that 2000 show, when I was a kid, I didn't really care too much for it. When I watched it not that long, and we talked about it on the podcast, that show, it's almost, that one's the better show almost. I guess maybe as a kid I just never wanted to admit it because I used to hear people say that too. I was like, no way. But that one is made so, it's made like Batman the Animated Series, and there's just tons of different villains in it. It still has all the good humor and stuff, but it almost takes itself more serious, a little bit darker, but it's just got so much change going on. And I think that was like the thing kind of missing in the old Ninja Turtles. It does change the farther it gets into the show, but at first it's kind of like, it's like how old G.I. Joe episodes sort of are. Like G.I. Joe's another one, like I have fond memories of it, but it was also a show that made me angry at the same time. It's like, I really like the characters, I like a lot of stuff about G.I. Joe, but something about it just always kind of pissed me off a little bit.
It always ended every episode with like somebody's hands on their hips laughing, into the sky. Because like,
well, I think it's just
Cobra's
G.I. Joe's like they never had a
idiot.
problem. There was not really like a lot of old American cartoon shows, just they never had conflict in it. It was just like everything works out. Where I think that's when like anime started becoming like into the US. It was like, oh fuck, there's consequences in animes. You know what I mean? Maybe in the long run somebody might come back to life, but people were dying, shit was going down. You just didn't get that in American shows. I mean, you got it in like Batman, and you got it in Spider-Man and X-Men, but a lot of the 80s shows that I was watching around the same time period, that was just a time period, and 70s shows especially, where nothing bad happens.
Where like I'll say this about the 3D Ninja Turtles movie. I think because the 2D one did come out at that time, but I don't think it was as big of a hit. I mean, I think maybe kids liked it, but for whatever reason, maybe it's when it came out or something, the movie didn't do that good, and a lot of people didn't really care about it. But now they got this one coming out. I mean, I don't know how the reboot did. I guess it did good enough to get a sequel, but if I had to guess, that's probably for like kids who watch the brand new one. But even though they're watching the brand new one, it seems like maybe it's kind of like, how do I put it? It almost seems kind of like usually when they come out with something from our childhood, they'll just kind of throw it out there. They'll ultimately make it for kids, but they throw it out there so, people like us will go see it because like, well, I know this. It's not going to be for me, but I know this. Where I think, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the reboot, it was all right. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but when that came out, it almost seemed like it was more the opposite. They went the opposite direction. Like, well, kids are going to see it regardless because they love that new cartoon that's out. So let's try and make it more like the older fans and just kind of keep it. That's what it seemed like to me. I was kind of looking, because even though I like the classic stuff, I was looking for something new because I've seen them do Shredder so many times, and I've seen him do the wild and wacky funny things so many times. I kind of wanted to see him do something just a little bit more serious. Doesn't have to be super serious, but a little bit more serious. Kind of like, 'cause I don't really know a whole lot about the comics, so I was kind of hoping for something more inspired off that, which it felt like it was more inspired off the original movies. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay, go for it. But yeah, no, I totally agree there. And this new one just looks like, because as I said, I like that last one that came out. Yeah, I mean, if you've seen Ninja Turtles like as many times, it's like, yeah, it's not like it's trying anything radically new. Where now I feel like, okay, we did Shredder, we got the Turtles introduced, April's introduced. Now, let's just go with it. And that's where I always think a lot of times sequels can sometimes be better movies once you get past the introductory stuff. It's kind of like, it's that sort of thing. It's like when you meet somebody new and you kind of go, hey, what's going on like that? But, a couple weeks into knowing them, then it's like, oh, okay, now we're having a good time. We know what each other's into. And that's how I sometimes feel like a sequel is. Mm-hmm. And, the old-fashioned way was that sometimes sequels weren't nearly up to par. But there's a lot of sequels. I like the sequels even more just for the fact that you jump into a world where they don't, we know the people. We don't have to waste our time. It's like, let's get off the action.
Just look at not all the Marvel movies, but I mean like Captain America 2 and Avengers 2.
Captain America 2.
Avengers 2, I think those are two.
Avengers 2.
Those are two
I actually just watched Avengers 2 again. I went out, I'm like, you know what? I just got to go out and get this movie. It's always going to be $22 or whatever the hell it is. So I'm like, I'm buying it, whatever. I just want to watch it again. And that one is it is a really good one. That and Cap 2, I think are like, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are like the three, I think, highest ranked Marvel movies that they've done, or Marvel Studios ones. Yeah,
and so you're at the point where you could come out with a better sequel. And even like, I mean, well, for me, Dark Knight and Batman Begins are kind of on the same, or on par, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but a lot of people like Dark Knight more than Batman Begins. So there's that.
There's another example.
So, but I will say though that this new trailer, even though it's not doing serious, it's doing the more wild and zany things. at least they're just like full on just embracing it and just making it way more insane. Because just the pure image, just the image alone, the last shot they have of the trailer is a slow motion shot of a tank coming out of the water. All the turtles are on debris going down like a river, and then firing a shell, and then with Bebop like, yeah, just waving his fist in the air, like firing at him. And then they just like they barely dodge out of the way, and the shell goes right into the camera, and just like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where I just feel like that shot right there. I mean, look, it's already like I already know what it is, but I feel like sometimes like just the fact that you see like all these like they actually have the turtle van in this one. They finally have the turtle van in the
because
turtle
they sort of
van.
got like the end of the last one.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there it is for a minute. But where the turtle van in this one actually looks a little bigger, actually looks kind of like the turtle van. And remember, it does something that the toy actually did do, which was shoot like discs, like a sewer lids, basically.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things. It's so crazy and so over the top. It's at the point where like, all right, yeah, it's aware, it knows. It's not trying to kind of like take something as ridiculous as this and try and like, oh, it's believable, you know?
No, it's just having fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a really cool thing. And that scene right there you're talking about at the very end, it reminds me it's going to be something like the snow scene sort of was in the first one.
The snow scene was awesome. I'm not going to lie.
Because that snow scene is just like, they do such a good job of it, just like this action. And I almost want to say it doesn't cut very much in it. It's almost like it's all mostly CG, so you can get away with it like that. But it's really cool. Speaking of another snow scene, I actually, the same time I bought Avengers 2, they had G.I. Joe Retaliation on sale. I'm like, fuck, I'd like to see that one again. That was a pretty good one. Mm-hmm. And that one, that snow scene too, with fucking Snake Eyes and the other fucking ninja guy, even though he's pretty much tied up in like a fucking coffin, or like
Storm Shadow.
Yeah, Storm Shadow. Like that one where they're like running across and they're battling fucking ninjas and like jumping off and there's avalanches and stuff going on. Like that right there, it's like the pinnacle moment in that movie. But that one's kind of like, it reminds me like it's in the same way that Ninja Turtles sort of is, where it's not a serious movie. Like you could do G.I. Joe something you could do serious, but instead what they're kind of going off is like, let's just make it kind of like you're watching a Saturday morning cartoon. You know, it's PG-13, but in the same time it's going to be over the top. You can have these ridiculous vehicles. You can have, you know, big lines and huge action and whatever. Who cares?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's just like kind of like, you know, it is one of those movies that is going for like spectacle and wow factor, just on like insane and how much shit's going on. And like another thing they had in the trailer, which I don't imagine Bebop and Rocksteady will be villains the whole time. I imagine what's going to happen is they're created by the remnants of the Foot Clan, and at some point you see a big wormhole over New York City, and it looks like alien ships come down. I'm guessing
I bet you they're bringing in Dimension X, which would be sweet. They're bringing in
Dimension X, and I bet at the last minute of the movie, probably, I'm guessing the thing they do in a lot of things like this now, which is the good guys team up with the bad guys to stop the bigger bad guy.
Yeah, and they might have Krang actually be in it for once. So this movie almost looks like it might be doing the thing like, hey, all that stuff that, and I think before, just kind of like in the other live action ones, it's like, okay, we could do fucking ninjas and shit, but when it gets down to doing all the weird kind of mutants and all that stuff, I think maybe, I mean, they could have pulled it off. Like, there's no way they couldn't have done Bebop and Rocksteady in the first two. Well, you look at the turtle and the wolf thing, it's like, well, just do it like that. But
in some way, I mean, I'm thinking back on this one. In some ways, I mean, people are probably going to make this comparison, but I mean, it looks different enough. I see the alien ships. I see it's actually Bebop and Rocksteady, so that's a big jump for me. I think people are actually making, because when I think back on the reboot, I think of that more as a remake than an actual reboot. Just because it goes by the same beats, changes a few things around, but I think of it more as like, because, you know, at some point, Raphael's the one that's kind of like, he's the main turtle of the movie. He's the one that kind of makes everything change. He didn't get captured. He got his ass kicked, and Splinter got captured. But they still had kind of elements of that. They had to go and save the brothers. And
mostly it's always Raphael fucks up at some point by being the lone warrior.
Raphael's always fucked it up somehow. So, I mean, in some ways, I guess you could call it a reboot, but it just felt kind of, in some ways, kind of like a remake to me. But whatever. The two can be very similar sometimes. But this one, I could almost see people comparing the remake thing, because they got what looks like Shredder's right-hand man, who I don't remember seeing that guy in the reboot, but I'm pretty sure he's the guy. He's the same guy that's in Turtles 1 and 2 of the originals that kind of comes in and says, like, I am the Shredder now, I am the Foot Clan now, whatever. And then
The big, tall, bald guy.
I'm pretty sure that's who that guy is in the trailer. He says, like, we need errand boys. And he has, like, a blade coming out of his hand, you know? I'm guessing it's him. Maybe I'm wrong. And
yeah, they could have changed his look up a bit for that Nickelodeon one. We don't know.
And the remnants of the Foot Clan, but make Bebop and Rocksteady. And then from there, like, so they're kind of doing the thing, like, because when I was a kid, I realized they were making more monsters. Like, they're going to make Bebop and Rocksteady. I'm like, oh, well, it's not Bebop and Rocksteady, but at least they're monsters, which I think those are other characters from the comic and cartoon, right?
Yeah. But yeah, it is that one where it's like, I wonder why you didn't choose Bebop and Rocksteady, but I just feel like, hey,
it just seems weird they never use them.
It may be like almost 20 years later, but still, I'm not complaining.
Everybody's kind of excited they're in this movie. I mean, there's some people like, I don't give a fuck either way, but I mean, I think
those are Turtle fans. That's all I have to say.
There is the thing where it's just like, I don't know why. It's because there are characters I haven't even thought of in a long time. I'm like, oh yeah, Bebop and Rocksteady, I remember them, but actually seen, I guess that was like one of the few things from my childhood, which I have not seen redone yet, was those two characters, which I'm sure they're in the new cartoon somewhere. But just seeing in a big live action movie, like, oh, there they are. I'm surprised it took them so long to get here.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I'm really excited about that.
And plus, just I'm also thinking about this in the concept of like, just how insane it all looks. Like this one, because the first one looked like it was still trying to be somewhat kind of, not entirely, but somewhat like...
Sort of Dark Knighty.
Sort of Dark Knighty and sort of kind of like semi-scientific to an extent. But this one just says, no, fuck it. It's going to be bright colors, vibrant, crazy. Like it looks like it's embracing more of the crazy 90s of the TV show. But something about it is there's the I just imagine like an older person being in the theater, like someone our parents' age, which, you know, they didn't grow up on it, but they knew of it because they had kids or grandkids that watched it. Mm-hmm. And then they just see how insane this movie looks. Just like the image of, or if someone even older than our folks, like the last shot of that trailer, which is 4 turtles in like on debris. A tank comes out of the water. A fucking rhino is fucking firing at him. I mean, you know, we know what to expect, but just like that pure concept, it just sounds like, what did you use when you wrote this movie? I just had a barrel of cocaine.
Well, it's funny because now that you mention that, like when I watched that trailer, that doesn't even cross my mind that any of that stuff is weird or over the top. It just seems right to me. But to somebody who's older, now I just start picturing myself in their shoes, and you're like, oh my god, that's just gonna seem like the most weirdest thing to them.
And then they're playing it tricky. It's tricky. It's all these really quick cuts, like shit exploding, fucking like rhinoceros man and a warthog man, just like, oh, you got jokes, huh? Then like going head to head with turtles. You see the turtles jumping on different spaceships, shit flipping over again, more explosions. April O'Neil, like in a sexy schoolgirl outfit for whatever reason, and then just like the last fucking shot, the tank firing into the camera with a rhino driving it, just like somebody at a grill, like, what the fuck is going on?
No, that's definitely true there. So yeah, so it is kind of just that weird thing, like. And I think here's the difference is okay, because G.I. Joe's almost in that same way where that movie tried doing the over-the-top thing. And I think, because that's a mixed bag movie. That's one of those ones, some people like it, and then some people kind of go, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me.
Oh, those are right.
Where I think is G.I. Joe, almost the concept itself, maybe the average Joe looks at it and goes, maybe this should be a little bit more serious. I don't know. I think where Turtles is just like, it's already out there anyways. In a sense, it's a totally out there concept. Like, in my mind, just because we've been with it our entire lives, it's totally normal. Totally a normal thing. Like, if I saw a turtle on the street, I'd be like, that makes sense to me. This is how life should be. But to somebody who's not in that thing, I can see them going, what the fuck is that all about? Why is there a turtle on the street? You know, why are they doing martial arts? And I think with G.I. Joe, it's kind of like, there's probably some old people going like, shouldn't this be a little bit more serious? Why is this so extreme and over the top? Even though I go, well, you know, they did it with other movies and they seem to work. Like Resident Evil is extremely over the top when technically the game itself is more of a, you know, I mean, it's got extremes to it, but it's generally a horror thing, and the movies took it to the next level.
Well, I think if you want to get an older person to watch something that's really extreme and over the top, it's got to be something they recognize. So it's got to be like Lone Ranger, even though that didn't do as good as other movies. That was one of those cases where it was kind of maybe not as insane as like Turtles 2 is going to be. But
no,
I mean,
it's in the same ballpark, I'd say.
But there was that level of just kind of like, like a train going off the rails down into like
horses
the water.
Jumping onto a train.
Yeah, there was a lot of insane like stunts and like crazy action scenes like that. And I think that you would, for an older person to watch something like that, they would need like an opener. Like, well, I know Lone Ranger and Tonto,
Yeah, and I like what we're trying to say. You're going like, how can we get an old person to see something that they never grew up with? And it's like,
well, it's one of those things. I'm not even kind of like, oh, I really want to sit down. It's more like I'm past that age of trying to share everything I like with everybody, but I am just kind of curious just to see older people's reaction to like newer things, Which at some point in time, I'm going to be that. I'm going to be like, what the fuck is this? And like some kid just showing me like on like their hologram watch some video. Like, I don't fucking get it. I'm already at that point with some things. So,
well, even with the Lone Ranger, there had been that fucking father, like when the kid was watching it, like in the 50s, like, Jerry, this is the stupidest fucking thing you've watched so far. Next thing you know, they're going to have fucking ninja-like turtles on TV. And you just know that there's just for every generation there's that show, and it gets progressively weirder as time goes on. But there's that show that the parent sits down and goes, "The fuck are you watching?"
Oh, I said this before. This goes back like at least a year or 2 years ago. When I said this happened years and this happened in the 5th grade, but I said this probably a year or 2 years ago. And I remember I had one of those moments with my dad. I was watching Nickelodeon and Cat Dog was on. And I was just watching it, and he sat down. It was like the last 10 minutes of an episode. And he sat down. He sat there and just watched it with me. He didn't say nothing. Didn't say nothing to me. And didn't just watched it. I remember looking over at him, and he was watching it. He was studying it. Like, is there something I don't get? Is there something I should understand but don't get? And then, like, as soon as it goes to credits, he turns like, was that a cat and dog fucking connected together? Like, yeah, Dad, it was. It's like, fucking weird. Gets up, and I just hear him go around the corner. I hear the fridge open. I hear a beer open up.
There's just like no way. It's just like he's just no way to process it. And I think that's just always how it is.
Fucking get it. Well, the dog and the cat are connected. What the fuck is this?
Well, I almost feel like I see some of those cartoons that come out for kids. Well, I don't see them. I see like the trailers for them, and I have no idea. Like it's beyond me. I already feel like I'm in your dad's position in a sense. The part where you're just watching, and you're like, so he's the uncle and grandpa?
I've never even seen that show, but
well, when you go to the movie theater, you get fucking weird ass trailers once in a while, so you got kind of a sort of an idea. My favorite story is that when there was a trailer once for Uncle Grandpa at the movie theater, like the special ed program came in, so there was all these kids. They're all like older than me, but they're up there sitting in the movie theater, and there's this Uncle Grandpa trailer going on, and it's like just the wacky new adventures of Uncle Grandpa and his nephew, or whatever the fuck he is, on Cartoon Network. And afterwards, one of the special ed kids just goes, "That looks fucking retarded." And, it's okay. He can say it.
He can say it. He can get away with it. It's no problem.
But that made me laugh so
hard. I was there with you when that happened.
You got a show that looks as stupid as that, and a special ed person thinks it's fucking retarded.
And he actually uses those words.
Well, that's because he said like the top of his lungs too, because he doesn't give a flying fuck. That part's not there in his brain where it's like, hey, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud in public.
It's like, thank you, go ahead. But they were actually, I remember that needs group was actually quiet throughout the whole movie, though.
Oh no, they've never been a problem. It's the weirdest one. It's mostly senior citizens. I consider that them and teenagers are the two worst like people at a theater. Everybody else is mostly pretty good for that matter. I've seen children better behaved than senior citizens.
But there was like there's that show that everybody loves. I'm sure if I actually watched the show and gave it a chance, I'd probably. I mean, it's one of those things. I'm sure you got to watch it enough to enjoy. You got to watch enough to get enjoyed. I'd probably like it if I actually did watch it. But Adventure Time.
See, I look at that show and I go, to me it just looks so fucking weird. I don't think I could like it because even as a kid with all the weird ass like MTV and Nickelodeon shows, I never was ever into the weird ones. I always liked my shows to be pretty straight. Sounds kind of weird, but I almost felt like almost conservative when it came to cartoon shows. It's just like, yes, Batman, X-Men, believable. I don't know. You know,
people like
Rugrats, Angry Beavers. That's a little weird for me.
I liked Angry Beavers.
Well, actually, I'll say this: Angry Beavers was one of the few Nickelodeon shows that was kind of fine. Like, it's like I remember because Rocko's Modern Life was one of those ones that was weird, but I enjoyed it.
Rocko's Modern Life was actually I mean, I never read any interviews with it, but that was like you could still tell that was a show that they were trying to get like on Fox
or MTV or something like that.
But it got deducted down to Nickelodeon because there's so many hidden adult jokes. There's an episode about going to the DMV. No kid knows what the fuck the DMV is or at that time,
Yeah. But, like in general, though, it's like I never really liked Nickelodeon because I just never liked the weird animation. And so, like, I'm always, as far as it goes, I'm conservative when it comes to my animation. I want people to look real. I want it to be believable. And, I want them to be doing martial arts.
I watched, I never sat down and watched a full episode of Adventure Time, but people tell me how good it is. And it's one of those things, I'll take your word for it. I'm not going to hate on the show. I'm not going to, because I don't really know. But Justin Rowan, who is one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty, and also the voice of Rick and Morty, does a voice of a character on that show called Lemon Grab. So I just looked that up, and the character, I'm not going to lie, it was fucking weird, but I saw like a little kind of like montage of just different moments of that character. And I'll be honest, there's a few moments I laughed. I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but I laughed because, he just has this incredibly high-pitched, annoying kind of like, if you watch Rick and Morty, you kind of know some of the voices he makes, but just kind of like this, like kind of almost Mr. Meeseeks, but he's very angry. Like, I don't want to be here, God! It's almost how he talks, all the time. So, and I'm like, what, if I watch the show, I might even like it, but I don't know. I feel like I get confused. Like somebody tried to show me like an episode. I watched the first 10 minutes of it. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
That's how I feel. It just, to me, it's just like, I'm not going to say anything like, you can't like this, but just to me, it's like, it's just not made for me. I already know. I've known this my entire life. I'm just not into weird animation. It's one of those ones, like, I mean, I can appreciate that, somebody's doing their own thing. I think that's always cool, but throw a fucking bat costume on there and make it, grounded, and I'm there. That's where like something like Rick and Morty, because I finished watching the first season of that. Even though that show goes to a bunch of weird places, it's still grounded. It's still like it's a kid and his family, and they have like issues going on and so on, and then they go to another dimension. So I can accept that because it's in another dimension. Things can be different and weird. It's not. I don't know. It's weird how that goes for me, but when a show looks like it's just completely out there the whole time, I don't know. Once again, who knows? For all we know, it could be a fantastic show. But
I was waiting to hear your reaction from like when you finished with the season. Did you so you saw that's a season where they have the Council of Ricks, right?
Yeah, that's like the second to last or third to last episode.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I thought that one was pretty. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, that was
pretty fucked up and pretty dark parts.
Yeah, that was that show. Was like I watched the first 2 episodes. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny, but like. It didn't grab me, and now this is like pretty much every show's like that. Because I always just think back, like something like Archer. Because I remember watching the first like handful of episodes I watched. I was like, yeah, this is funny. It's maybe not amazing. I'm enjoying it. It hasn't captivated me like a South Park or something yet. And then all of a sudden, like once I got farther into it, I just loved the show. Went back and watched those original episodes over again. I'm like, these episodes are amazing. Because you just got to get in with the characters and figure out how everybody works, and so on. But no, overall, Rick and Morty, really impressed. Definitely up there as far as, adult sitcoms go.
Yeah.
Cartoon sitcoms.
Season 2 is awesome. Check out Season 2 as soon as
you can. They don't have it on anything yet for some reason. It's not on
I bet when it comes on Blu-ray or DVD, you could probably get it on Hulu or something.
Well, it's weird because Hulu's mostly like, that's like the thing about it. It's up to date. But obviously not for that one, which, I don't know, does Cartoon Network have their own thing? Because everybody seems to have their own fucking, like, service now.
They have, like, the first couple episodes on the website, but,
but it's not like they have something where, like, pay
you can pay, that bullshit, pay to, like, be a member and get it, but they have, like, the first couple episodes on there for free.
That's almost kind of, it's just, we mentioned it before, but it's like, it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, I don't mind paying for a couple of these services, but now, when everybody's, like, pretty much, like, putting their services out there. And,
holding on to their own show and not really, and like not taking it to Netflix or something like that. It's just like, all right, fuck you.
well, I saw a thing. It's like it came on my Amazon Prime. They're like, "Hey, you can get a free month of Stars." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do that free month of Stars. Watch fucking Evil Dead, and then not have to pay for it because I do not want anything else off Stars."
Is the Evil Dead thing? Is that more of like a? Is that more of like a? Is it like Netflix where it's already done? You can pick when to watch it, or is it like a normal show?
I kind of wondered that because like if that was the case, I was like, maybe I should just wait a couple weeks and then get that free membership just so I know I don't get stuck going. Fuck, there's 2 episodes left, and now they got me.
Like I was wondering if it was like a Stars kind of streaming service like Netflix, where you can just like watch all the episodes, or if it was like a normal like, oh, you just have like a month of Stars, so that's all you got it for.
Well, I have to say this, okay, like on that Netflix way of just like, and Amazon does it too, but where they just dump all the episodes at once, I almost feel like that's almost maybe not the best way to market that stuff. Because think of it this way: say if somebody just said like, all I want to watch is Jessica Jones, or all I want to watch was Daredevil, or something like that. All they have to do is pay. They could just get the fucking free month trial, watch all the episodes right away, and then never pay. If they made the show where it was like, okay, we're going to release one a week, like something like Jessica Jones would have 13 episodes. Well, you would almost be guaranteed, even if they got the free month, that they would pay for at least 2 more months.
Don't give them ideas. I like not having to wait.
Well, I'm just saying, like, what does actually bother me? Because I don't have that free time to like sit down and just like watch everything. Like, goes back to like the Final Fantasy. This is why they don't make it for our age. It's just like, because in high school that would have been perfect for me. Be like, oh yeah, fucking you just hit play and you'd watch them all weekend long. But now it's like, oh, it's gonna take me fucking forever to get through all this. Like, there's all this stuff dropped on me at once.
I'll watch like 1 or 2 episodes before I go to bed.
Yeah, it's like that's about the only thing. It's like, because the one thing I think about the Ash vs. Evil Dead, the episodes are only like a half an hour long. I'm like, that's so smart. Because every other show, it's like, I just don't feel like it's necessary to be 45 minutes. And now they're like, a lot of shows are at an hour now, like a lot of the ones that come on the internet, because it's like they don't have to have the time block for commercials. But it's like, that's almost like too long. Because you watch them, and it's like, they're good shows. It's like, I've been watching The Man from High Castle or whatever. And that's a good show, but the one thing I do feel, it's like, it probably could be edited down, like, maybe 15 minutes, like, out of each episode. It's good, but it just feels like they just make it long to make it long.
Yeah. No, I get you.
Because people like the longness for some reason.
Yeah. Longness.
But it is one of those ones I just think about with Netflix. I'm like, dude, you guys are, like, shooting yourselves in the foot by just releasing them all at once. Like, why?
Apparently they're not, because they're doing pretty good.
Well, they'd probably be doing better, though.
I don't know. Well, I mean, people like the whole thing of like just being able to watch it whenever they want and not having.
I guess the only thing about it though is it prevents like the talk, because it's kind of like the show comes out and it's kind of like, yep, it's there and done in like a week, and then it's almost like you don't hear people talking. I mean, obviously we're talking about it now, but we're talking about like a different way. It's that sort of thing. Like, I felt like if you spread it out, like, one, you get people talking about it for 3 months, which would probably once again get you more service, and I just feel like it'd get you'd just be made more money. And I'm not saying like, it's one of those I'm paying for Netflix every single month anyway, so it's like, it's not like I'm losing out on anything, but just saying that it just seems like kind of the way to go. It just seems like to dump them all at once. It's just kind of like, they're done. Okay, wait another year.
I don't really give a shit, really, when it gets down to it that much. But I mean, I kind of see it both ways. But it's one of those things where, like,
I guess because it's one of those ones, like, all those shows that, like, when they get dumped at once, I have a hard time finishing them. I think it's like, I watch a couple episodes and go, oh, okay, I just feel overwhelmed, and then there's more other stuff to watch. Oh, okay, I'll get to that. It's like Daredevil. It's like I've still never finished Daredevil, and it's just kind of like, I'll get to it. But I almost have this feeling like, I'm like, will I get to it? Is it that far out that it's just like, I guess that's it. That ship sailed.
Daredevil's good. I'm going to say finish Daredevil. I mean, so is Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones is pretty good, too.
I watched the first episode of that show. It was okay. I don't know.
I think it's good. I mean, I think it's kind of cool. They're kind of just going... I mean, it's just interesting to me. I mean, this isn't the only saving grace of the show. I think it's pretty good. But it's just interesting to me that just the same world where you got the Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America, Iron Man. In that same world, you got a guy getting decapitated with a car door. You got people getting their arms like dripped off or like cut off by like with mind control, as well as butt fucking and pussy eating, and that's all like in like
That's the part
Daredevil
that's
and
kind of
Jessica
weird to me, though.
Jones.
Is like in the Jessica Jones one, it's like, and I think they're doing it because like a Game of Thrones, where they're putting like almost like too much sex
Well, that
in
shit
there.
was actually in the comics though. That was actually
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that like it's not like it doesn't exist, but it does feel like it's one of those ones because ever since Game of Thrones, it just feels like people go like, put sex in everything. They didn't allow us to do this before, so now we can. And it's that sort of thing where you have to go through like that 5-year period where people get used to it again. It's like, okay, yeah. Like I asked because like the first episode's like, do they need like 4 sex scenes in one episode? It's like you get the point like in 1 or 2.
No, yeah. I mean, I want to say
I'm not saying that like in a conservative way, just saying like, is it necessary? It's just like it just doesn't feel like it's like necessary for the storytelling. It just feels like it's there just to be there.
Well, at some point they do kind of cut back on it a little bit. I want to say that it's just kind of they got to get across the Luke Cage Jessica Jones relationship, and then what she do? She takes pictures. She like she's a private investigator, so she takes pictures of people. So that comes with the territory, I guess. But it's one of those things where and they had the whole. I mean, I want to say the whole scene where like he fucks her. I want to say that whole scene was like they made a. I never read the comic, but they made a bigger point of it in the comic. Apparently, they had more of an explanation. Where this one, they show enough to let you know what's going on, but it's the whole thing is like she's so fucking numb to everything since she was under Kilgrave's control that it's just like she wants to do weird, dirty, fucked up shit, and they imply it more in this rather than just flat out explain it like they do in the comic.
Huh. Yeah, it's one of the ones like it's okay, but I don't know. It just kind of reminds me like. That's why because I always looked at something like Game of Thrones, and that just never felt like a show that I would ever be interested in.
Well, Game of Thrones, I'm not into medieval shit, but I will say.
Oh yeah, we've had that before. That's like the whole reason like why Fallout seems to appeal very heavily, and for some reason the same company can make a similar game, and you just go Skyrim never seemed interesting to me. It's almost kind of like it's the same thing with like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. Like Dragon Age just I don't know, just doesn't look like it's. Well, it's kind of similar to Mass Effect. I really like Mass Effect. I liked Mass Effect way more than I even thought I would, but I don't know. I like space.
Well, I
like Lord of the Rings, but that's about as far as it goes.
Yeah, well, I will say that I think that Jessica Jones, as it goes on, like it probably could be maybe a few episodes shorter than what it is, but there is some actually. I think the writing in it's pretty good. I like the character a lot. I mean, the character I mainly know her from when she would like come in New Avengers and all that, but. I like the character a lot, and I think the girl playing her does a fantastic job. And it's surprisingly, it's kind of like, I mean, I don't really know enough about this, but I hear like people say that it deals with a lot of PSTD, as well as just kind of like victimization, overcoming that kind of stuff, and it does a pretty good job of that. And it still makes the character a victim, but at the same time doesn't make her too weak and doesn't make her too fragile,
Yeah,
and it goes a direction like there is like a story that's building up to everything's building up to, and it goes a direction I'm really surprised where it goes by the end of it.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. At some point, maybe we'll finish it or so. I don't know. I still just feel so overwhelmed with superhero TV shows. I've caught up with Flash and Arrow, and that's about it. It's like I'm not even looking forward to that new one that's coming out in January, just because it's not like cool characters. It's just like. Stop making so many shows. Just put all the characters into like 2 different shows. Like just keep it at Flash and Arrow. Like Supergirl, I wish she would have just been a character in Flash. That almost just would have seemed like a better way to do it.
Well, I will say this.
Hawkman and Hawkgirl, just keep them in Arrow or whatever you want to do. Just like, do they everybody have to have their own little show?
This is a bad sign right here, because earlier people have been talking about like people are going to get like superhero fatigue and science fiction fatigue. We're like, oh no, it's here to stay. But really, if you're saying like, I don't got the time for this shit, think of how many other people are saying that. So
I know. Well, like, and this comes from somebody who's really into this stuff. It's kind of like the Marvel ones. It's kind of like they mostly always go like on the back burner just for the fact it's like, okay, I got to watch my DC before. So if I can catch up with Flash and Arrow, that might leave me a free time to watch a couple other things. But it's like that Legends Tomorrow. Yeah, it sounds like a cool idea, but it's like this is actually how I think would be fine to do that Legends Tomorrow. That'd be a fine summer show. Like if it came out when Flash and Arrow were on their hiatus, and it played between there. Yeah, that'd be cool. But it's just like, I think it's just one of those ones like, the only people that have, you must have a lot of free time in your life to keep up with every single one of these shows.
Well, isn't Flash and Arrow about to go on hiatus in a minute, or are they at the mid-season finale?
I think they just finished their mid-season finale because I just finished those ones. So, and Gotham finished theirs.
So I think it's one of those things where you probably could do. I'm just thinking about because we're at the point now. Even though I do like the stuff, I think it's here to. I think it is here to stay to a certain extent, but just not be as popular and it'll come in waves like other stuff. Because we already are. Even though like people talk about how great Marvel is, Marvel Cinematic Universe, you already got people talking about kind of like, I'm not so excited to go see Ant-Man, even though Ant-Man did good and got good reviews. By that point, it was just kind of like, I mean, I'm sure it'll be good, but I'll see it when I see it. That's what a lot of people were saying. And people are already kind of getting that way with some of the TV shows. Like if you're getting this way with some of the TV shows, like I'll be honest, like Legends of Tomorrow, I think it's cool that it's happening, but I mean, keep in mind, I love Kevin Smith and I'm glad he's passionate, but sometimes he just gets so passionate. It's like, dude, I can't reach that level of like enthusiasm. I just almost cried that we live in this world now. I'm just like, well, I'm more just like overwhelmed at how much shit's out. And I can't, because the Legend of Tomorrow thing, I'm like, that's cool, but because it's the Atom, it's White Canary, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and then Heat Wave, and then Captain Cold, and then probably every episode there's going to be a different character popping in for a minute.
Which I would almost watch that show since Captain Cold's in it as a main character. That guy's like my favorite character on Flash. In a sense, when I hear that, I'm like, I would almost just watch it just because he's there. Because if he was in every single episode of Flash, that would make me so happy.
I don't want him.
That guy is such a good actor.
I like that guy, but I don't want him to be there as a main character because I like the dynamic he has with Flash. So I don't want that. It's going to be kind of weird watching him as a hero in this show and then being like...
Well, hopefully he's kind of like an anti-hero. Right? That's the only way I can...
He's going to be there helping out the good guys in the long run. So hopefully they do something kind of like... I mean, this kind of thing will usually annoy me, but I can see them doing something kind of like they use him for the first season or the first half of season 1 to like just bring in...
Sell it.
Just so it's like, okay, here's a character I know. So they go in, and then when they introduce some other character... he turns on them and he's back in Flash. Because I like him. I like him as Flash is because you could have like Zoom and Reverse Flash. They're like basically his they're like his personal arch enemies. Mm-hmm. But more than anything, even though you think they'd be more of his rivals, Captain Cold is more of his rival. And I agree. And Captain Cold has always been one of my favorite villains. So even though I think it's cool that he's a main character in the show, I like him as a villain. So I'd rather see him use him sparingly but very well in Flash.
Exactly. I think that's. I mean, like as I said, like I'm fine with him having like his own. It'd be cool if it was more like there was like Captain Cold, but it was all from like his perspective instead. Instead of being a show about like him being like the villain in the episode, it was more like he is the villain, but you see everything from his point.
You'll
like,
get that
would be a cool
eventually.
show. But like once again, no more news shows though. That'd be cool for like one episode maybe, because just the fact there's only so much time, and it's just like I mean I guess the average Joe just has nothing better to do in his day that he just comes home and can watch 3 or 4 hours of TV.
The your usual slob.
Yeah, well that's
nothing to do with his time, but
I think for people that. I don't know. This always makes it sound like you're higher and above. But I mean, for people that don't like do creative projects or don't have really like, they go to work and then come home, and because we all know there's a lot of people that go to work, come home, and watch a copious amount of TV. Then maybe if you're one of those people, you could watch all these things. But I guess it's one of the ones when you're a busy individual, you're kind of like, okay, I'm lucky if I could watch 5 shows a week, and half those shows have to be like. Cartoon half an hour, like something or another. It's not very long.
Yeah. No, I get you. Well, I mean, I'm sure. If any of their shows are going to sink down real quickly, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Legends of Tomorrow. Not saying it's going to suck, but I'm just saying just because I feel like people already have an idea of who Green Arrow is. People already have an idea who Flash is. People know who Supergirl is. But you got the Atom. You got the Hawks, you then got 2 villains from Flash, and then you got another side character from Arrow. So I think you are going to get people a little bit more of like, wait, who are all these characters? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will be their biggest show ever, and then this will be, people could use a sound clip of me saying this like a fucking dumbass, But I could really see the show just kind of being one of those ones that gets canceled after one season.
Yeah, I feel like I might have like a Constantine thing, because Constantine was an amazing show, but I think one, it was on the wrong channel. I think NBC Friday night was like a horrible place for it to be.
Friday night's unless it's like on a kids network, that's a horrible time, because that's when, like, if it was a Friday night, that's where all the big kids shows would be on. But
even though this day and age,
if you're an adult, I mean, when we were in elementary school and middle school, that's when Cartoon Network had Cartoon was on Friday night, and that was a big thing. That's when they played Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Laboratory, Courage the Cowardly Dog, all their big ones right in a row. And now, maybe that's different now, but
well, because nowadays it's like there's very few people that, there's still people out there, but it just seems weird for somebody to like actually go, okay, I gotta plan out 8 o'clock when my show comes on, and they get all like ready for it and everything like that.
And all that, but I mean, I could still see. I can go ahead.
I was gonna say, because nowadays you just think that hopefully 90% of people are smart enough to DVR or watch it on Hulu or something like that, and make it easier on themselves.
I feel like
you don't want that Full Metal Alchemist stress that I used to have of like keeping up with that show.
The Friday night show just seems like the Friday night show. It's like that's on its hind legs. That's it's about to go down, And I think that Smallville was that for a while. It just had a very strong fan basis that was just barely keeping it there. Just the only thing keeping it there was not views, but it was just a very strong, devoted fan basis.
Yeah, well, I think Constantine was just like, it was a dark, kind of creepy show, and coming on NBC, because NBC always just feels kind of like the yuppie channel nowadays.
Probably would have been better on Fox or like Sci-Fi.
Yeah, I think Fox would have. It would have been a great show to come on like after like Gotham or something like that. Like have like a 2-hour thing. It's like you watch Gotham, then you watch Constantine.
Even like something possibly like, even though I know that you got mixed bag of feelings with this channel probably, but AMC probably, something like that.
Yeah, well, no, I think that would be a perfect channel for it. Or something like FX, or even like I think being on like El Rey or something like that would have been the way to go. I just think Junior. NBC was just like that. It's like the mom yuppie kind of. It's like the wrong place for like. And don't get me wrong, the NBC used to have good shows like Seinfeld and stuff back in the day, but nowadays it's like look at the stuff they have. It's that is not the place for Constantine. Yeah, it's just the one where it's just got all those stuff like Parks and Rec and 30 Rock and Saturday Night Live and just all that kind of like yuppie, uppity, like New Yorker TV, where I just think it needed to be in a more hip area, more somewhere where it's like, hey, we're more like it almost worked better even on something like Sci-Fi Channel. I think would be better for Constantine. Mm-hmm. I mean, you kind of want to be on a major network just so you get that little bit more broader audience. Mm-hmm. But this day and age,
I don't think that it's one of those things like Sci-Fi Channel. We don't we only have public television. How are we gonna? I think everybody has by this point, even if you don't have television, you have internet, and you probably whatever show you want to watch, you probably have streaming of some kind.
I like how you say that. Like you're probably just everybody out there. There's probably still a lot of poor people out there that got just basic. Antenna.
I'm sure there are. All right, let me
but they're not the fucking demographic.
All right, dude. All right, you know what I fucking mean. It's one of those things where I'm sure there's people out there who don't have I don't have antenna. I don't have antenna. I don't have cable. I don't have public.
But you got the internet though.
But I got the internet, and I think we live in an age. Maybe not everybody, because I didn't have internet for a while back where I lived. Back in Sonora, but I did have satellite. So I think a lot of people that either have one or the other. You probably either have at least basic cable, satellite, or internet. Maybe you don't. I'm sure there are those that don't have them, but I'm saying most people this day and age probably have one of those three at least. Most. And those are the people that are probably, pushing the ratings on whatever show.
Yeah. But I still think that if you can get on one of the main ones, I mean, I see probably what they were trying with NBC. Probably saying hey, we got fucking NBC. It sounds big on paper. I mean, you got one of the three main networks, but I think when it got to that point, though, it's just this day and age, people are so selective. You almost got to be kind of the right place, right time, and kind of from looking at the past, whenever it's anything kind of like magical Christian.
Magical Christmas.
black magic. Stuff like that
yeah.
never seems to do very well. Like, I always look at movies like End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the old Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves, Dogma. Like, they always get kind of, somehow, some way, it's hard because you get the people that do like it, it's a small audience. You know what I mean? And then Constantine, really, it's like, that's a hard show to sell to, like, mom and pop,
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, and I think that's sort of where it needed, like, I think it would work great on something like either an Amazon, a Hulu, or a Netflix, but hopefully they'll bring him back, because they had him on Arrow, and that was badass. If they could just, but I think that's just something how they should do it. Like, why don't you just throw Constantine, he comes on every 3 episodes on Arrow, or maybe he comes on Flash on every, couple episodes, and then it'd be just neat to have these characters that maybe, like, yeah, he's on Arrow for a couple episodes, and then maybe he's not there for a bit, and then he's on Flash for a couple episodes, and then maybe he's not on for a bit, and then, do that with everybody else, but...
Well, I will say that I think that some of the characters they got are on, like, Legend of Tomorrow. I mean, none of those characters, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong here, maybe there's a lot of Hawkman fans or a lot of Atom fans out there. I'm not sure a lot of those characters can really hold their own show. So I think...
That's why there's, like, 6 of them together.
Yeah, so... But I think... and that's, it just sort of seems like all kind of like the offbeat characters in one show, which sounds kind of cool in concept, but at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, well, I got one show over here with one character that's good enough to sell it. So, like Flash or Arrow. But I think that something kind of like, what was I going to say? Like, maybe almost do kind of like a cinema. Well, they already are doing like their own universe kind of thing, but maybe just have like certain characters that kind of filter through different shows. Like, a character like Constantine or Adam just can kind of go back and forth between Flash, Green Arrow, and whatever other show that comes out eventually down the line.
Or what they really should do is they should just take from the cartoon world and either do something like a Batman Brave and the Bold or a Justice League Unlimited thing, where maybe you have like your core character. Let's just use Green Arrow for example, since he's kind of the center point of all the DC TV shows. He's your main character, but he's always cycling in new buddies, and that's how you sort of get to know these other characters that could never hold their own show, but on, that they could come in here and there on other stuff and just keep being cycled around, which that's the one thing that I liked a lot about the first season of Arrow, even though it was playing it really safe. I liked how, like, every 2 episodes you were getting, like, a new character in there, which the only thing about the last 2 seasons is they just focused so heavily on just, like, 1 or 2 like main characters.
Who was the guy that was like he was the guy that played Bison in Street Fighter? Who was that guy?
Damien
that was,
Dark.
That was Damien Dark.
Yeah,
okay.
And like it's like the last one it was just pretty much all Ra's al Ghul. Everything was Ra's al Ghul. Maybe you got a couple other people coming in, but the cool thing was I think it was in the first season. Once again, they're playing it safe, but I mean, like, you got episodes where you had Huntress in for a couple episodes, you had Deadshot for a couple episodes. You had Deathstroke for episodes. You had even things like the Royal Flush Gang, even though they were done kind of simplistic. But the whole thing was that they kept bringing in different villains every couple episodes, which was kind of cool. Which now they're just doing the thing like, let's just do the long, season-long story of having this main one be in there the whole time, and then we'll bring in maybe 1 or 2 other guys, but... I think that would be the best way to do something like a Legends of Tomorrow, is if, let's just say they cycled through all the DC characters, and it was just like in that show. That would actually be pretty sweet.
Yeah. Something to that effect. I'm sure they'll figure something out. Just right now, just some of the characters they do got, it's just like too much. I don't know, they just got too many, like... I think they're getting shows. I think it's one of those things. Oh, Flash and Arrow were so good. I think they're getting too confident with this Legends of Tomorrow show. But who knows? We'll see what happens.
But that's probably a good place to leave off with. We could talk about that for longer than anybody needs to hear. But make sure to check out oldmanorange.com. And until then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Ryan Dunigan.
And we will see you some other time.
Later, folks.
Check out our website at oldmanorange.com for even more podcasts, cartoons, videos, music, and more. Send us an email at oldmanorangepodcast@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review us on iTunes, Podomatic, or any of the other fine sites we might be located on. If you want to help out even more, click on the Amazon or GameStop links on our webpage before you make any purchases there. It won't cost you a penny, but it sends us a little something our way. Thanks again, and tune in next week for more Old Man Orange Podcast.